Greetings, everyone. Today is Thursday, April 24th, 2025. This is the Transportation Commission meeting of the City of Albany. And do we call roll first to do the land statement first?
Roll call first.
Please.
Commissioner Baldwin.
Here.
Commissioner Kerr. Commissioner Hiley.
Here.
Commissioner McCroskey.
Present.
Commissioner Zuba. And Vice Chair Barnes.
Present.
And Commissioner Javendal. Chair Javendal is absent.
So Judy will read the land statement for us.
Proudly. The City of Albany recognized that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lijan. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must take strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to the indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all and now make this their home.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment for persons desiring to address the advisory body on an item that is not on the agenda. Please note that each speaker is limited to up to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the committee's ability to take and/or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items may be referred to staff for comment or a future agenda. Is anyone in the audience here for public comment?
We have one public comment. Amy Smollins, go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Amy Smollins with Albany Strollers and Rollers. I wanted to announce that our organization has funded 6 more bike racks and 3 more public pumps around town. Businessing sponsoring the racks. At their locations are Best Friends Wine Bar, Strictly Vinyl Records, and East Bay Bike Centers, and there are 3 other racks that we funded. And the 3 new public pumps are at the Ohlone Greenway Plaza, the waterfront near the bike link lockers, and Memorial Park by the pool. The pumps work for bikes or scooters or strollers, any tires that you can fill with air. So if you don't have a bike, you can still use those pumps. I'd like to thank Grizzly Peak Cyclists, who give us an annual grant that helps funding those racks, and also want to thank city staff Ben Matlaw, who we worked with closely to refine the locations of all these racks and pumps and ensure that Public Works installed them really quickly after they arrived. So I hope you guys on the commission and on staff and the public will use the what is now 80 bike racks and 5 public pumps that are in our 1 square mile. So happy rolling. Thanks.
Thank you. No other public comments? And we'll close public comment and move on to our next item, item 3-1, Advisory Body Handbook Overview and Training, to be presented by our City Clerk, Ann Chu, and our Community Development Director, Jeff Bond, for those of you who have not met them. Presentation on advisory board roles, responsibilities, and procedures for city public meetings.
Great. Thank you, Chair Barnes, for the introduction. We have been doing these types of trainings in a little bit different format in the past. In the past, we had one training every 2 years at the community center and invited all the commissions and committees to come together. This year, we're trying something a little different, which is to take it on the road and make presentations to each of the commissions and committees individually. Hopefully, that gives a little bit more opportunity for some give and take, and perhaps we customize it a little bit for different committees and commissions. So Ann and I are going to share this presentation back and forth, and you're welcome to interrupt us and ask questions as we go along, or wait to the very end. One way or the other, we're perfectly comfortable with that, and I think we'll just get rolling with it.
Which are set by the city charter, which is Planning and Zoning Commission action, either by an ordinance, a resolution, or minute action. And transportation is one of those that is set by an ordinance.
So the purpose of advisory bodies is to provide guidance and direction to directly to the city council. And it's a little bit, the way that the commission and commissions have focused their energies over the years have evolved a little bit. And this year, we're really encouraging to stay focused with an alignment with the strategic plan goals of the city. The city council recently approved a strategic plan that's up on our new website. And you'll find that we'll be bringing some of the agenda items that we'll be bringing to you over the course of the next couple of years are directly related to that. And, there may be other things that come along that city council asks the commission to deal with, or you may feel like there's important things that the city council should take up, and that's fine. But just keep in mind, again, to try to be grounded. Certainly as staff, we're responsible to account for progress on the strategic plan goals and objectives, so you can expect for us to be focused in on that a little bit. And this slide kind of repeats that. Oh, and to mention, yes, the other thing I was going to mention, in the past we've had work plans prepared, and that tended to be a rather lengthy exercise where the commission would spend 2, 3, sometimes 4 meetings, I think, in some cases, talking about the work plan and then sending it to the city council, and sometimes it got sent back. And that was a lot of energy for something that, in not every case, really yielded a lot of ultimate focus. So this year, the city council has asked staff to prepare a very simple status report from time to time. I think it's every year, on what was accomplished. So we're not going through that work plan exercise. Again, focusing really on the strategic plan and then the other things that may pop up from time to time.
And from your appointment congratulations email that you received from the Deputy City Clerk, you should have seen that your term is a 2-year term, usually runs until December of an even number year. Of course, there's a 45-day interim in between transitioning from one term to the next term. And the council will, if there's at any time, if there's any resignation or foreseeing, vacancy, then council will reappoint. They can reappoint up to the end of October of the second year term. They will not make any appointment if it's the last 2 months of your term. That it's not helpful for the new appointee to try to get up to speed with the rest of you for the last 2 months. Also, every member would need to reapply after the end of the term, which you guys, I think some of you did when the new term came up. And most of the advisory bodies, the seats need to be residents with some exception. So that means if you're no longer a resident, when the seat requires you to be a resident, then you will have to resign or you will be removed. Or if there's anything else that makes you eligible, like a student seat, and you're no longer a student, then you will have to vacate the seat. And one other thing to mention is between the advisory body members and the staff liaison, we're hoping that there's very good communications between the commissioner and the staff liaison. If there's any time that you guys are maybe going to be absent, or if you're going to be running late, please make sure you communicate that with your staff liaison. It's especially helpful if you can let them know as soon as possible, because sometimes we need to make sure that there's quorum for the meeting, especially transportation and planning and zoning. You guys are discussing very location-specific, sometimes it's location-specific items that may have to do with, like, some people may have to recuse. And in that case, we want to make sure that there's a quorum. And also, if you think that you have a conflict, make sure you let your staff know, staff liaison know.
We'll get into the conflict of interest stuff in a little while. Just to reinforce, the sooner you can tell us that there might be an absence, the better. We start thinking about, tomorrow morning, we'll start thinking about next month's meeting for the commission. And so it just helps to have an early head start whenever it's possible to, like, hey, I might not be there, I'm not sure. That lets us just kind of manage the workflow a little bit, particularly if we're focusing on a particular area, city, or particular project where having everybody participating might be important. And of course, things come up at the last second, you're not feeling well, something else, that's fine, of course. But just the sooner the better, even if it's tentative, that's super helpful.
And of course, you guys all know about meeting end time. I think you guys established a meeting end time. The meeting start time is for all the advisory body is most typically 7 o'clock, unless there's some special topic that you guys will be discussing, and that may be a special meeting that's at a different time. If you guys are going to be discussing items past that end time, you would need to take a motion or make a motion and have second and take a roll call vote, make sure majority of you agree to extend the meeting. And August is a time for break. So hopefully you guys will recuperate from all the meeting for the first 7 months. That gives the staff a chance to prepare for the next year, fiscal year too. One other thing on this slide is a reminder that to all of you that the information that you filled out on your application, all the contact information, including your email address, are all considered public records. So basically anything anyone submit to the city is basically public record, with a very few exceptions. So the suggestion is, if you want to keep your city business separate from your personal email address, please feel free to set up a separate email address, and you can email city clerk to let us know, and then we'll make that change on your application and make the change for the future communication between you and staff. Sometimes it makes it a little bit easier when a public records request is submitted to request for communication, say, between you and a member of the public.
And just to clarify on the email issue, we don't encourage people to contact you directly or use that personal information. If they tell us they want to communicate with you, we give them the generic commission email. But legally, if they insist, we have to give it to them.
Right. We haven't really had anybody that requests, I should knock on wood. We haven't had anybody who requests for specific commissioner's email address. Usually we just, like Jeff says, we tell them to email tc@albanyca.org. That way all of you see it, including the staff liaison.
So next slide here is public record. This is a pretty simple point, which is anything you put in writing in any form having to do with city business is a public record, and it could be subpoenaed, or in some cases it may not be subject to a public records request, but it definitely would be subject to a subpoena. So be very careful what you do. Make sure you're prepared for whatever you put in writing about city business to be in the public realm. This includes your personal emails, most importantly, and sometimes a surprise to people, text messages. So if you're texting back and forth during a meeting, that's public information if somebody wants to have that. And also, of course, social media.
Request for that.
Yeah. It's going on in LA now. The city of LA's mayor, there's a lot going on about what her text messages were during the fires in LA in January. It surprises people sometimes and can be, hopefully not, but sometimes could be a little bit uncomfortable. Social media is the other one, of course, that the whole world can take a look at as well, and we'll talk more about being careful about that in a second.
One other thing, if there is any information that you, any reference material information or factual information that you would like to, say, share with the rest of the advisory body, and you guys know you can't email everybody all together, please go ahead and email the staff liaison with that information. The staff liaison will share with the advisory body as well as members of the public.
Next slide is the one that we don't really want to, we wish we didn't have to talk about, but just want to make sure you're aware of all the safety considerations that are available to you. First of all, if anything happens here, we're fortunate that we have a police department in the same building. They can get here really quickly, and we have a fire department across the parking lot that can get here really quickly. So if something happens, whether it's a medical emergency or somebody is here that's making us feel uncomfortable, the calling 911 would be the first action to take. If it's a medical emergency, even with the fire department across the way, we do have an AED in the corridor across the way on your way to the bathroom. And hopefully the fire department's here, but maybe not. They may be out on another call, or even if they're here, you can probably get those pads on somebody faster than they can get here. So if you've been trained in how to use that, great. If you haven't been trained, you should. Next, emergency exiting. Obviously, the main way in and out is in the lobby, and that's the best and quickest way to get out. There may be a circumstance where you don't want to go out through the lobby, and whether, again, it's just something that makes you feel uncomfortable, or there's a fire or whatever. The other way out of this, where you are particularly that works, is going through the conference room. There's a door back there into our conference room. If you go into the conference room, there's another door at the end of the room, glass door, that goes out onto a patio that's kind of hidden in the trees that goes out to Marin. And so if you want to get out and not go through the lobby, that's your other choice. The third choice is to go all the way down by the restrooms and continue out. But there's something going on in the lobby that you don't want any part of. That's your way out. Next, disruptions in meetings. I don't recall this ever happening in a Transportation Commission meeting, again. But people have a constitutional right to come in here and say absolutely horrible things. And there's not much you can do about it. You have to give them their 3 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever it might be. It is generally not considered a good practice to engage with people who say horrible things, because they're likely to respond and continue to say horrible things. Or even more horrible. So usually the best practice is just to stay calm, maybe call a recess for a few minutes, just to kind of get the adrenaline out of your system and kind of be able to focus back on city business. If it's something that you feel like it kind of can be hard to get any work done for the rest of the night, just adjourn the meeting. We can reschedule, we can have a special meeting. A lot of the things that you do can wait a month. It's not urgent, particularly if it's an incident that's really uncomfortable to you. So, but yeah, for better or worse, our Constitution protects people who want to say terrible things to you. Glad to get that. Move on to other things. So just to mention kind of the background of what's going on behind the scenes for our meetings, we start to work on meeting agendas a few weeks. We start to kind of think about it months ahead and start working on things 3-4 weeks beforehand. We're scheduling consultants. We maybe, if there's an applicant or something, we'll be arranging that. The agenda packets for the Transportation Commission, we strive to get material out to you as much as possible on the Friday before your meeting. It doesn't, because we're relying on consultants often, they don't always get stuff to us right when we ask them to get it to us. So we apologize if you're getting things a little late, but we're striving to do that all the time. We also, when it's appropriate in the type of action, we would occasionally be sending out public notices. That usually goes out, in this case, 12 days before the meeting, the Friday a week and a half before. So again, we start drafting that, and it goes out in the mail. When we send a public notice out, we try to have that meeting, have that agenda item heard, even if things are changing. At least if somebody gets a postcard and they show up, we want to give them a chance to say what's on their mind about that item, even if something happened and you're not ready to take action. So I'm going to do public comment, and we already kind of covered that. I will talk about the role of the chair and rotation to chair. I don't really need to say much for this commission because you're really good at this in terms of managing the meeting. Some commissions and committees are a little bit less structured, and you have a good chair and a good vice chair and a kind of a culture of following a structure that really helps get meetings rolling properly. And there's also a practice, more or less, of rotating chairs, giving everybody on the commission who wishes to have the opportunity, an opportunity to serve as chair. It's both kind of an honor and a challenge, but also a burden. So some people don't want it. That's great. Other people are really good at it, and they can do it more frequently. But generally, kind of make sure that everybody who wants that chance gets that chance is our recommendation.
One thing about public comment is came to my mind is you would not try to get into a back and forth conversation with the public commenter, because a lot of time that becomes more than 3 minutes, and next thing you know, your meeting is going till past your end time, set end time. So usually you would want to let the public comment speak all their questions. If they have questions, let them speak all their question, and then you can answer them at the end. The other thing is let them, everyone should have equal opportunity, so that means everyone should be given one chance, 3 minutes. And at least at City Council, the City Council does not allow seating time. And I would probably suggest I don't think any advisory body is allowing seating time. So everyone should have one opportunity and up to 3 minutes for them to speak.
And what Ann is referring to is the practice of one person saying, I've got my 3 minutes, but I'm going to give it to somebody else so they get 6 minutes. And people have 3 minutes to speak to you. They can write a limited amount of letters or emails. There's lots of ways to communicate to you, but in terms of the meeting here, 3 minutes gives them plenty of time to make the key points. In terms of you individually representing the commission or the city, first of all, when you say going to a city council meeting and speaking on something, whether it's transportation or let's say it's transportation related, if you're representing the commission and you're there to communicate the commission's position, make sure that the rest of the commissioners have endorsed your role. Typically it's the chair or vice chair, but sometimes it's someone else. And usually there would be a discussion at the commission level, like who's going to go to the council meeting and tell them about our recommendation. If you have a different opinion, you're certainly welcome to the city council, but you should say, although I'm a commissioner, the view that I have is maybe a little different, but it's mine personally, not of the commission as a whole, just so that commissioners and the members of the public don't get confused about what you're, the foundation of what you're saying. The same goes for media contacts. We don't get a lot of those anymore because the world of journalism is changing quite a bit. But if there are official journalists reaching out, like the Chronicle or East Bay Times or something, our request is that you first refer them to our public information officer, Brennan Brown. Brennan is really good at contacting the journalist, seeing what the questions are, and connecting the journalist with the person who might be able to best help. That might come back to being one of you. Usually it would be a staff person. You can always speak to a journalist, but again, you would be speaking not as a city official, but as a person, as an individual. And particularly in say, disaster situations, you might be saying something, they say, oh, Commissioner so-and-so told us this, it must be an official city position on something. And that can get to that can cause a lot of confusion. So being really clear that you're speaking for yourself, whether it's to the council or to the media. And then finally, social media. This is where it's probably easiest to kind of get sideways. You can post about city business on social media, but do please be careful. It's easy to get into a long, kind of a chain that gets spun out of control. And for that matter, if you're reading something on social media about business before the commission, make sure you're double checking it. There's a lot of information out there that, and personally, I've found next door is maybe the worst in terms of lack of accuracy. And you just have to, if you hear something or read something that you're concerned about, check with your staff person or ideally Ben or Justin to say, hey, is this true? Is this what I'm reading true? Because it might not be, probably isn't. Next, conflict of interest rules. I'm going to go into the first bullet points a little bit more in more detail in a second slide, so I'm going to skip over that and just note that we do have a code of ethics. The City of Albany does have a code of ethics. And we also are required by state law, if you are to be reimbursed for any sort of city-related activities, let's say you go to a conference or something, you need to take this AB 1234 training. That's an Assembly Bill 1234 that passed a few years ago. It's a pretty simple test. It's basically an ethics test. But in order to reimburse you, you need to submit that certification that you've taken the training, which isn't a bad idea to take anyhow. I mentioned the conflict of interest rules. So these laws are very complex. This is a superficial summary of it. And the most important thing is if you have any questions, reach out to us. We'll refer it to our city attorney. And our city attorney, in some cases, may refer it to the Fair Political Practices Commission, which is the state agency that will fine you if you get it wrong. They'll fine you, not the city. And there's been history of that here in Albany. So the basic law says anything within 500 feet of any place where you have an economic interest. So if it's a home that you own or a home that you have a lease on, if it's within 500 feet, there is an assumption that you have a conflict of interest and you should recuse yourself, step off the dais, sit in the audience while that item is being discussed.
Or a business.
Or a business, if you own a business in town. At more than 1,000 feet, so that's 0 to 500, the assumption is you do have a conflict of interest. More than 1,000 feet, the assumption is you do not. There could be exceptions to both of those. An exception for the more than 1,000, let's say you own a grocery store and there's going to be a proposal for another grocery store that's 1,200 feet away. That, you probably have a conflict of interest about that other grocery store that's going to compete with your business. So that would be one where you probably do have a conflict of interest and you should step down. The gray area is between 500 and 1,000, and it depends, is the answer. There are some criteria in the law. I don't think they apply very often in Albany, but theoretically, if there was going to be a big transportation facility, a BART station or something like that, and you live 750 feet away, you might have a conflict of interest. The kinds of things that you normally do, I wouldn't think there would be a conflict of interest. Again, this is a really superficial overview. If it pops into your head like, hey, there might be something here, reach out to any one of us to start that analysis. We don't want you to get in trouble. We don't want the community to think that you're not acting in the best interest of the entire community. So this next set of slides was provided to us by our city attorney. So we're going to read some of these slides, summarize some of these slides for you. And it has to do with everybody's favorite subject, the Brown Act. The basic intent of the Brown Act is everything you do, transportation related, is done in public within a written agenda posted 72 hours beforehand. It's, again, another complex law. It's changing all the time. But the basic thing is that it applies to the city council and it applies to essentially any body, any subsidiary body that the city council creates. So commissions, committees, so forth are also subject to the same rules, just as though they were city council members. I'm going to go through these pretty quick. You want to, this is yours, yeah.
This one, I'll go really quick because I don't think you guys, this body creates ad hoc committees or subcommittees. Ad hoc committee or subcommittees are usually temporary in nature in terms of the topic, and it's composed solely of less than a quorum of the body. So, for example, for this body, the subcommittee may not be more than 3 people, 3 of you. And it's, like I said earlier, it's temporary in nature, and it should not take longer than a year. And if it does take longer than a year, there's things with the standing committee. Standing committee is also less than a quorum, but you would have to set a meeting schedule. You would have to post the agenda just like your regular meeting here, and everything is open to the public. Whereas the ad hoc committee, you can meet, say one-on-one at your home and whatever time you want.
So a meeting is anytime there's more than 3 of you, with a couple exceptions that we'll touch upon, but if there's more than 3 of you talking about transportation-related things, that's a meeting. That includes electronic connection, can be part of a gathering, telephones, that kind of thing. The other thing that's tricky about this is that you can violate the Brown Act by having a series of conversations. So, using an example, if Justin, Ann, and I are on a 5-person committee, the 3 of us would make up a quorum. Ann and I could talk about something, that's fine. But if I go over to Justin and say, I just talked to Ann and she's going to vote against this thing, that second conversation triggers a violation of the Brown Act. And even a person who is not a member of the commission can create that Brown Act violation by going to each one of us individually and telling each of us what the other person said. So, as you know, the thing to do is if somebody comes up to you and says, well, I spoke to Ken and I spoke to Michael already, and let me tell you what they said, you should say, no, thank you. Don't tell me, because if you tell me, that's a violation of the Brown Act, and you don't want to do that. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but people can inadvertently, through their advocacy, make that a violation. There are some exceptions. You can obviously talk to people one-on-one in the community. You can tell them how you feel about something, as long as they don't go around and talk to everybody else on the commission. You can go to conferences, you can go to other meetings, you can come to city council meetings, other commission meetings, because those are agendized. They're talking about what's on the agenda, and just the mere fact that you're there too is fine.
Jeff, can I clarify a question? This is a 7-person body, so quorum is 4.
Right.
So, and this comes up often where there's some meeting of some kind, and people want to go to it. It could be, a colloquium at the university or somebody who has some relevant knowledge. The 3 of us could go to such a meeting and not violate the Brown Act.
If it's a public meeting, if anybody could go to it, then all 7 of you could go.
But we can't all sit together and whisper among
You
each other.
Can't talk about city business here.
Right. You could talk about weather or baseball season or whatever, but you couldn't say, hey, we should talk, you go to a transportation symposium at KALB and the 4 of you are sitting in the back of the room like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we did this? And well, maybe we should do that. That's where you would be crossing the line. But you all 4 can sit there and listen to the presentation as long as anybody else could attend.
But if we're, say, having breakfast together and we end up talking about city business, if it's just 3 of us at breakfast, that's
fine.
That's cool.
Again, as long as the 4th person doesn't wander by or inadvertently talk to a 4th person about that conversation.
Or the 3 of you have breakfast together, and one of the 3 goes out and tells the 4th and the 5th
Right.
person and said, hey, we had breakfast and we talked about XYZ.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
So ribbon cuttings, those kinds of things, fine, no problem. And mentioned kind of the less than a quorum, kind of the in a sense, if you're at something that's, you know, an event at UC Berkeley or something, that's in effect kind of an ad hoc committee. Now, with respect to the agenda itself, once an agenda is posted and your meeting has started, you should have to stick with what's on the agenda. There are very rare exceptions that I've never had to use, actually, of adding something to an agenda if there was extreme time sensitivity and it was something that you couldn't have known about, which means you can't just have forgotten. It has to be something you didn't know about, and there's legitimate time urgency. The only thing that comes to mind when I think about this would be in the event of a disaster or something, and we need to make a decision really quickly. You know, are we going to close down a roadway? We have to decide now because we need to get started in the morning. Something like that. That would be, you know, a potential. But those are very rare. We can always have a special meeting, which is if something does pop up and we just need a little bit more time. Special meetings only need 24 hours notice. So that is a possibility. And probably a more likely pathway if something urgent came up. And I think we're getting close to the end here. Again, in terms of things on the agenda, if it's not on the agenda, particularly if it comes up in public comment, you can respond, or you can ask us to respond with, you know, maybe a factual piece of information about a date or when something will be on the city, be discussed, or what the outcome of something was, but it's kind of like a one-sentence answer is sort of the idea of the response. In some cases, we could respond to the a question that comes up in comments. Again, if it's related to something that's on the agenda, or if it's just a basic factual thing, like when's the next city council meeting, we can share that. But if it goes into depth on something that's not on the agenda, it just has to wait.
I think I've seen a lot of advisory body where how they violate this is when you're talking about what to put on the future agenda, you start talking about why you want it on the future agenda, and then you start expressing the reason why you think it's important, and that's expressing your opinion and getting into the discussion of why, how, and what it includes. That can get very iffy. So you just want to be careful. If you're, for example, the example that I gave for future agenda item, just state very simply what item that you would like to see, and maybe a one sentence of the reason, and then leave it there, and then I'm sure staff will work with the chair to figure that out.
And we will occasionally, hopefully kindly, suggest that the commission wrap up a discussion if it feels like or stop it before it becomes a discussion. Sometimes you inadvertently start to talk about something that's an announcement. Like, that's not an announcement, it's a discussion. So bear with us if we intervene a little bit. We're just trying to keep everything in order. Social media, again, I think I mentioned this. You can post, you can respond to questions, but do be careful. It is easy to create that serial meeting scenario. If all of you are reading the same blog or something and each of you start to respond to it, like, oh, that's really interesting, or I don't like that. You can very quickly have, in effect, a conversation between 4 or more of you, even though you don't mean it to be a conversation between the 4 of you. If you all 4 subscribe to it, then it is. And that includes emojis. You know, the happy faces and the frowns are a form of communication.
Thumbs up, the thumbs down, the hearts, the actions.
Yeah.
Those are all your opinion about the item, so.
There's case law about all this stuff. We're not making it up. I do think we're getting close to the end. Okay, this is
probably one of the things that most advisory body asked about. So of course Before the pandemic, we have what we call the traditional teleconferencing rule, where if a member is unable to be here in person and they have to join the meeting from somewhere else, well, they would have to let the staff liaison know where the remote location is. We would have to put that remote location address on the agenda itself. So that means you have to let the staff liaison know well before we post the agenda. The remote location will have to be accessible to the public. Like, you can't have it at a place where somebody need to pay to get in to, attend the meeting. And then the other thing is the agenda, just like how we post the agenda here around the city, you have to post at that remote location minimum of 72 hours before the meeting. And if somebody does join you from that location, you have to be able to, the person has to be able to participate, just like anybody. Not sharing with a headset or a earbud, that does not work. And since the pandemic, we have now what we call AB 2449, which I don't know if anyone from transportation ever asked to do that, but we do have some members, including city council, some occasionally would say, hey, I'm going on a business trip, but this meeting I understand is very important. I want to be part of it. So some of the reason why you can't do that is, or not business trip, sorry, it's these reasons. For the just cause, which is childcare, contagious illness, physical or mental disability, travel while on official city business or another state or local agency. So say if you work for a private firm and you say, I'm going on a business trip, that doesn't count. This is only count if you are going on a business trip because of the city or another, or California, the state of California, or another local agency. And some of the requirement for to participate using the just cause is, of course, you have to let staff liaison and the rest of the body know at the earliest opportunity possible, including at the start of the meeting. So we've had members who join online and say, hey, I am joining this meeting per AB 2449 because I have a contagious illness. You don't have to go into the detail of what your illness is or your child care need is, but you do have to say it's because I have contagious illness or I have child care need. And then at least minimum quorum of you need to be physically here. So to constitute quorum, even though the person is joining online, they count as a member and voting and all that stuff, but they do not count towards quorum. So you still need to have 4 members physically here. And then there's the other situation is emergency circumstances, physical or family medical emergency. I've heard from another city that they had a member who, I don't hope that on anybody, but they had a member who participated while they're in the hospital bed. Very dedicated. But anyways, you do have to request and you do have to make announcement, and some of the requirement to be able to participate virtually is, let's go.
Next one.
Yeah, next one. So the camera must be on the official at all times. You can't go like, well, I'm also doing something else or I'm cooking, so let me turn the camera off. You can't. The camera has to be on the member at all times. If there's an individual that's 18 years or older in the same room with you at the remote location, you will have to announce that and disclose the relationship between that individual with that individual. And all votes must be by roll call. I think they're by roll call here anyways, right? I think it's even city council, we do all roll call vote. We don't do any of like all in favor say aye. So that we don't do. And if there's a technology issue that disrupts the meeting would have to pause until that problem can be fixed. And if that problem cannot be fixed, then the meeting will have to adjourn.
With respect to this, if you're using it, Ann has a script that she'll basically, if you're the person at home or wherever you are, Ann has a script that you would read at the beginning of the meeting that checks all these boxes. I want to go back to the traditional remote meeting that Ann was talking about, where you have to post it in 72 hours, the traditional teleconference rules. It basically doesn't work. Theoretically, I guess if you're visiting your cousin in East Coast, you could put a 24-hour, 72-hour notice on your cousin's front door. But if you're staying in a hotel, unless you're there for 3 days and you can keep that notice up for 3 days, it's kind of ridiculous. We've had people who were traveling in their car, like, can I just call in while we're traveling? No, because nobody can join you in their car.
The flyer gets taken off by the wind.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So anyhow, it's been done, but it's hard. And if you really want to do it, let us know. We'll try to make it work, but don't count on it.
The other minor point is, especially if you want to participate virtually from outside of the U.S., you definitely need to let the staff liaison know way in advance so that we can make sure the Zoom can accommodate, because currently our Zoom is limited to participation from within the U.S. only. This is because of all the Zoom bombing before, so we want to limit it to within U.S. If there's a need, let us know and we can make that work.
So that's it. Thank you for bearing with us. It's a long presentation, kind of dull, boring stuff, but it's important. We want you to at least get a general idea, and please feel free to reach out to any of us if and when one of these things becomes relevant for you.
Yeah, feel free to email staff liaison or email city clerk if you have any question. If we don't know the answer to it, we'll contact the city attorney. The other piece that I like to share real quick is our new website. I'm not going to try to do it now, but if you go to our new website under government, there is a link to advisory bodies. And if you click that, there's a menu at the top right. Stop sharing. At the top right, there's a menu drop down, and there is a link for advisory body training and resources. That same link is also on the advisory body page on the lower right corner, advisory body training and resources. And that will include the video, if you guys rather look at Mala, our city attorney, than listen to the, maybe you think that Mala would give you more, Mala would definitely give you more detailed information from her slide. You can watch her video, and for the Brown Act part of the training. And there's also the new updated advisory body handbook, as well as the slide that we have and the Brown Act. Yeah, they're right there. So, and the video's on the very top of the page. So yeah, any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You'll only have to do this once every 2 years.
My 8th time.
It's changed some, and there's always something.
It's always good to hear.
I just want to take a minute to officially thank Jeff for many years of service and particularly for a good training, and Ann as well, but thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. Let's do the consent calendar. Item 4. Consent calendar items are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by approval of the consent calendar. The staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the advisory body. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the advisory body or a member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar. So any requests?
I have 4.3.
Ken, will you? Nope. Okay, well, let's do 4.3 then. Alameda County 2024 Performance Report.
So in the Alameda County 2024 Performance Report, there is reference to a variety of items that are talked about in terms of timelines and funding. The one that kind of caught my attention and that I wanted to have all of us think about is the notion that the prioritizing of the ADA project, the ADA compliance project between Tulare and Masonic. This is scheduled, according to this report, for 2029, I believe, and other projects are scheduled for 2026, 27. It's a mystery to me, and I'm happy to hear the rationale as to why something in which we have already some exposed liability to the city, and I believe some settlements that have gone in place with the ADA compliance of this particular segment, would be scheduled for 2029 as opposed to earlier in the calendar of the project. So basically, my question is, who set up the timeline and can it be changed?
Unclear of the reference you're making here.
So what we're talking about is we're talking about the Alameda County Performance Report. There are several pages. Let me see if I can, maybe you could pull that up as an attachment to this report. It's on the consent calendar. And I'll wait while that happens.
Was something from the development. Yeah.
Item 4.3, Alameda County Performance Report.
This is retrospective. I think you're talking about something that relates more to the CIP and prospective plans.
No, I'm pretty sure it was 4.3, Performance Report.
If you can point us to a page number.
No, you're right, CIP. I'm sorry, it is the CIP, Capital Improvement Plan, as 4.3. Public right-of-way, 78 million, streets, 6.8 million, sidewalks, 1.5 million, Upper Solano ADA, 1.4 million, scheduled for 2029. So that may be further in the agenda, maybe 5.1. I apologize if I'm ahead of myself here. But we'll get to that.
Okay, in that case, if there's no other suggestions for pulling items from the consent calendar, do we have a motion to move on?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second?
Second that.
Roll call.
Roll call?
Sorry. Before we do that, anyone from remote attendance wish to pull an item on consent calendar? Please use the raise your hand function. Not seeing. So proceed to roll call. Commissioner Baldwin.
Aye.
Commissioner Kerr.
Yes.
Commissioner Hiley.
Aye.
Commissioner McCroskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Zuba.
Aye.
Vice Chair Barnes.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, now, 5.1 Capital Improvement Plan Update. Staff will review the process for updating the Capital Improvement Plan, CIP, and present a discussion of funding and prioritization of the transportation-related projects for the upcoming CIP cycle.
I'm sorry, do we need a motion to approve the Transportation Commission meeting minutes of our last meeting, or was that covered in the motion to approve the performance report?
The consent calendar motion included all 3 consent items in one motion.
Thank you.
Julian, did you want to pull something? Did you have any
I
comments
had a
about?
question about that.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having me today. My name is Allison Carrillo. I'm the CIP Program Manager. With me is Devora Zouder. She's our Program Manager. She is immensely important to making sure that we are following all of our funding requirements for the many sources of funding that contribute to the paving and right-of-way program. All right. So today we're going to have what I hope is both some higher level kind of CIP overview and kind of thread the needle. Some people have more experience, gone through this. Other people, this might be the first time. If you need more information at the end of the meeting when we have questions, I'm happy to also speak to that. So from a big picture, just to orient ourselves, right now we are in the kind of current goals and needs and identify actionable projects and priorities portion of the CIP. Following this meeting, we'll be presenting to City Council with a study session in an upcoming meeting where we'll discuss both Transportation Commission feedback, PROS Commission feedback, as well as any other public feedback we receive along the way, and discuss kind of how to set up these projects, both from funding, timing, and staff resources. So this is what you're seeing in this presentation is draft form, and there are likely going to be changes as priorities are identified, funding is realized. With that, let's go through some quick definitions. So in previous discussions, sometimes it's not entirely clear what a CIP is because we use it in multiple ways. So for tonight's presentation, I wanted to be a little more specific. So what we're talking about tonight is a capital improvement project plan update. So this is the planning document that speaks to what our projects are. And then talk about a little bit how it's different than how the capital improvement projects are different than CIP plans and what a program is, just so that we can kind of have the same base language. So lots of words here, but the project is essentially what is the goal of the scope of work that we're performing. It's guided by kind of foundational documents. These may be assessments, public feedback, goals, objectives that are identified through documents or through public meetings, needs, these kinds of things. The CIP plan is actually the strategy for timing and funding to achieve those goals. So what we're looking at is methodical renewal projects and strategic enhancements to take advantage of what funding we have. And the program is the structured activities to achieve the plan goals. So that's where Devora and I will go back. We'll think about resources. We think about ability to self-perform the work in-house by staff, but other staff needs. Consultants, we think about how to structure things in order to deliver the projects and the goals that the city is asking for. So what are the city goals? How do we achieve them is really what we're talking about. So why is it important? One of the key things to a CIP plan is to identify long-term needs and goals, as well as the incremental needs to get there. So this is ultimately an iterative and living document. What I mean is iterative is both at this process tonight or through the next several months as we finish. There's going to be iterative changes as we go through and we make sure we understand the full picture across different programs, but also iterative in the sense that every CIP is supposed to build on itself so that we can achieve long-term goals and not just only look 5 years in the future. It's also a living document. What we found in our previous CIP is that needs come up during the 2-3 year time period of the plan, immediate plan. And when that happens, and we've either through a need or identified opportunity, we could take the project to City Council and we explain the need for it, and that may include coming to Transportation Commission first for transportation-related items before moving on. to City Council for final approvals. So it really ultimately creates a roadmap to achieving the goals, both short, medium, and long term. So I'm going to bring it back to reality. That was a lot of high-level discussion on concepts. I have a very odd family dynamic, so I'm going to use my family kind of dinner table conversations to talk through this. But the framework is we start with our assessments. We kind of understand what our needs are, what we get frustrated with, what we need a new gate. I'm tired of walking around. We need a bigger house. Native plants are going to be beneficial, but we need the lawn is getting really hard to deal with, and we have all these bills. Things are falling apart around the house. How do we take care of them? And we all do this to some degree for your own family budgeting and planning. And so what you see there is kind of pulling this out a little bit. We have certain maintenance needs and we have certain needs that are future or enhancements to our existing kind of life. So we start taking a look as people in these family conversations of, well, what makes sense to kind of tackle together? What makes sense that it might need kind of future planning? And what can we take on as we go through some of our maintenance things to improve our life? And so we start incorporating the need for air conditioning with our furnace upgrade. Maybe we end up with some kind of heat pump. This is a little bit more building focused, but kind of the concept still applies. And so that's what we're doing tonight. The staff has done some of the preliminary work to kind of package projects together, but a lot of this, almost all of it, is really dependent on previous work done by this commission, the City Council, through planning documents such as the ATP, other planning documents including the Park Recs, Open Space Master Plan, strategic goals, all these things, really contribute to the ability to both understand what our needs are and the future desires so we can start planning these projects out. With that, the way that we have organized the CIP here in Albany is that we have core programs. These are things that are focused on preservation of existing assets with a focus on annual and cyclic kind of work. So rehabilitation annually, biannually, something like that. Complemented by discrete projects, which have a distinct beginning and end. Generally, these are going to be enhancement projects, construction of new assets, and capital renewal that doesn't kind of naturally fall under a core program. An example in recent projects would be a signal upgrade. They theoretically is kind of maintaining an existing asset or bringing it up to kind of current standards, but we don't see them that often. We only have a few, and so this is not an annual project or program that we do year to year. It really comes up once in a while, and once they've been upgraded, there's many years between them. Let's see. Okay, so back to this slide about achieving our goals and roadmap. So if we expand that back out to kind of our current project, or our current, where we are currently, how does this contribute to project delivery? Because I think that's where a lot of people really want to see work happening. And the way it contributes to project delivery is that we have these foundational documents, these guiding documents to organize needs and goals, as you see on the left, that feed into a CIP plan that slowly, builds upon itself. But the CIP plan builds into individual project delivery. And those foundational documents then feed into the delivery of each of those projects as well. So those foundational documents we don't look at them once and then say, okay, well, the project's set. That's it. We look at it over and over and over as we go through initial scoping. And this is when we would take the project back to kind of initialize the project, meaning that either at a planning level or a public works initiation through a pavement management plan. The project starts and we review all of these different goals and documents and things to make sure that when we understand what the project is and we identify opportunities to bring in other goals and needs where possible and where it won't become a budgetary issue that we are now creating a new project out of it. And when that happens, that is also fine. We just want to take it to City Council and make sure that everyone's aware of kind of this need for increased discrete project updates to, say, like a paving project. And so project delivery may take many forms. Sometimes it takes multiple projects. So this is maybe a simple project. We have a scoping, we have advisory body recommendations, and we go through a few different iterations, and hopefully we get into construction fairly quickly. More complicated projects, you might see multiple city council and advisory body outreach, utility relocations, maybe looking for grants along the way. The projects may start out, we're thinking it's one way, and end up being a separate way. And sometimes what we find is that we have to have multiple projects in order to achieve a final goal. And so we see this a lot with planning documents and other foundational documents, is that we had to create those documents in order to inform our work. Or a programming document, this is something I reference in the CIP memo, is that for Pros Commission we have, or under the Parks, Rec, and Open Space, we have a programming project proposed to talk about Albany Greenway, and one that's to talk about Pierce Street Park, and that's because there's lots of different desires, and so you have to have a vision and a plan for each of those desires in order to be able to really cohesively create a finished product that meets as many goals as we can and be fair to all the different folks who have different desires for the same space. Something that we struggle with in Albany with space. And then funding strategy. So we really want to make sure that our funding, stable funding, is dedicated to preservation. This makes sure that we can continue to keep our roads in good condition. The investments we've made previously are still operational, and that includes things like shared use paths, signal upgrades, these things. Once they're in under an enhancement project, we really want to make sure we continue to maintain them and that they roll naturally into kind of a preservation and maintenance kind of program, either through, again, through operating budget or through future capital projects, depending on the scale. Sorry. And when we talk about enhancements, these are ones that are generally have more kind of grantability, they're more attractive to grant funding, and so strategically looking for opportunities, both from planning all the way through construction, to support or augment funding that we may have to support those enhancements. And this is less critical for transportation, but on buildings and facilities and our parks and open space, we want regular replenishment as reserve funding for kind of situations that might occur. With that, going into kind of recent projects, this is just to give a sense on where we were. This is about a 5-year look back to just kind of say where we were and now where we're at. What you see here in the dark purple and the light purple, these are pavement rehabilitation and maintenance projects that have occurred in the last 5 years. In blue are projects where the water replacement occurred, and we either coordinated with them so that they replaced half the road or repaved half the road, we repaved the other half, or we traded off where they paved one road, we paved the other one where they had come through with pipeline work. And so this is kind of mutually beneficial. Everybody's happier when a whole roadway is paved than when half a roadway is paved. In green, these are projects, discrete projects for transportation. It's a little hard to see, but we also have the Cornesis Creek path down here towards the bottom. Gonna right in this area. It's right at our city limits. So these are some of the major projects that have occurred. As you can see on the bottom, there's a lot more projects that occur in our pavement annual street program and annual sidewalk programs that aren't reflected here because there would just be too much data, but we do regular zone sidewalk shaving. I believe with our latest sidewalk shaving, we have now covered the entire city in terms of zones. So we have 5 zones, and we've done the entire circle around the city. Striping refresh, we also have a zone program where we go through zones and we do a couple of striping refreshes per year. Patch paving repairs occur under some of our programs. We have sidewalk repairs, which will be shown on the next slide for what's occurred in about the last 10 years. And we also do minor repairs, curb gutters, things that aren't really covered under kind of operating. It spans that kind of budget that are minor repairs, but not quite an operating repair. And this is the sidewalks. I think there's quite a bit of community support for this project, so I wanted to make sure we had our program, so I wanted to make sure we had a specific slide just to show how many properties have been touched by this program, which I think is a great thing. And with that, kind of jumping into the projects on the list in the memo, which are looking forward now. So on the very left-hand side of the screen, we have our annual street rehabilitation program and our annual sidewalk rehabilitation program. These programs are primarily informed by the pavement management plan and an annual, a 5-year sidewalk survey. So the pavement management plan is a biannual update every 2 years. The entire city is surveyed for PCI, Pavement Condition Index scoring, and it informs our future paving priorities. And then the annual sidewalk rehabilitation program is the 5-year sidewalk survey, which is also a citywide survey, and is, I believe, currently ongoing, if not completed already. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Under capital renewal, again, these are projects that are primarily preservation in nature. And so these are resurfacing of the Buchanan Bridge, the Upper Solano Avenue curb ramps, shared use path pavement renewal, and I'll go into a little more detail as we go through the project list, just to make sure that we kind of get a sense on what these projects would entail, and a citywide streetlight renewal project. In the middle are enhancement projects for new facilities that are in progress. So we have an active transportation plan update you've heard about from transportation. We're also working on the Pierce-Cleveland Bikeway connection, a Cleveland Bikeway, Jackson Bikeway, and San Pablo Ped Improvements Phase 2, which is being delivered by Alameda CTC. And then the fourth column is enhancements to talk about for prioritization and understanding of where they fit into this larger picture. And we'll go through those in more detail, followed by streetscapes, which are, this is a new category, but what we're finding is that on large streets where there's many desires and limited space and many needs, is that we end up with a project with multiple scopes, meaning that it crosses programs. And so Marin Avenue, we have both all the transportation improvements, we also have storm drain improvements. And so having it in the same category as a speed table 2024 list, which is installing 7 speed humps, isn't really a great way to look at this list. So we kind of covered the programmatic street rehabilitation program and sidewalk rehabilitation program. One thing I do want to add to this is that for the street rehabilitation program, we're going to be kicking off our next pavement management plan survey this fall, and then coming back to Transportation Commission to discuss kind of what comes out of this survey and where we are in terms of street rehabilitation in spring of 2026. And so that's, right now we have a major project ongoing up Marin Avenue. And so this will time out really nicely with being able to identify what are our next projects that we want to talk about under the annual street rehabilitation program for paving projects. So speaking of Marin Avenue, we also have, we just received bids for the Buchanan pavement repair. This is a project that is essentially a patch paving project that is complicated by the fact it's on Buchanan Avenue. And so we took this to council as a patch paving project, but because due to the complexity of working on Buchanan, it exceeded kind of administrative contracting requirements. So it went out to formal bid. And we're hoping to get this in construction by summertime of this year. Expected to primarily be working at night due to kind of making sure everyone's safe, both the construction teams or construction crews as well as schools and everybody who uses the roadway during the day. We're also currently working on Cleveland Avenue Bikeway. This is joined with a paving project that's on Cleveland Avenue under our programmatic projects. I don't think that was made clear in this. And then lastly, we have an ongoing sidewalk repair. Phase 10 is currently being advertised and waiting for bids. On the capital renewal side, so we are currently working on getting a contractor or consultant in to assist with the Buchanan Bridge resurfacing project. This is taking off the top layer of the concrete bridge, couple inch or so, and putting back a new surface, followed by some joint repairs and other kinds of maintenance. Under this project, although not supported by the Highway Bridge Program grant that we have, we're also looking at the Buchanan Bridge currently has water barriers and posts, delineator posts, to assist with kind of folks who are coming in and out of the target area. We want to harden those and make that so it's more permanent. It's going to reduce kind of the maintenance needs and just kind of create a much better environment. Upper Solano Avenue curb ramps. This is initiated through an city ADA settlement with a construction deadline of December 2029. Hearing the earlier comment, I will provide a little more information. So, on our project sheets, the years that are in there are fiscal years, and so we would be ideally starting construction in 2028 ahead of the 2029 deadline in order to make sure we reach that construction deadline well in advance. And part of that is starting design work fairly soon for curb ramps. This also being proposed is a shared use path pavement renewal project. We've put in almost 2 miles of new shared use paths in the city of Albany in the last 12 years or so. And despite them having a less wear because of traffic loading, which is, so pavement wear is 2 parts. It's both heaviness of the vehicles traveling on it, provide a lot of wear, but also weathering alone creates wear and every 7 to 10 years is a kind of a typical maintenance cycle in order to keep our shared use paths in good condition. We also identified some needs that kind of span the transportation aspects. So it's both a pedestrian path, transit path, and part of the linear park that exists both on Albany Greenway and specifically for the Albany Greenway. And with that, there's some additional decomposed granite repairs and refresh that we want to do that kind of spans the transportation and parks spheres, I suppose. So this is being proposed in two projects or 2 phases. As shown in the draft project sheets, I think we're showing starting with the Albany Greenway, followed by Buchanan. But this is something that I think it would be great to talk about with today's conversation. And then citywide streetlight renewal. So we completed a streetlight assessment and evaluation report in early 2024 and identified the need for renewal of many of our streetlights along with enhancements. The last time the streetlights were replaced in full was over 10 years ago. Streetlight LEDs have approximately 7 to 10 year life, so we are reaching end of life on a lot of our lights. And unlike the previous high sodium lights, HPS, high the previous lighting style before LEDs, I am struggling to remember exactly what that acronym is, so there's too many.
High-pressure sodium?
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. High-pressure sodium. The LEDs, the diodes fail individually, and so we don't have a binary on or off, which is something that helps with kind of identifying a need and having somebody report on it. It slowly fails, which means that often it's not noticed. And so around the city, there's a lot of replacement needs. We have increased how many replacements we are doing on our operating side, but given the kind of quickly approaching end of life for these, we are proposing a streetlight renewal project where we would get ahead of it. We don't want to replace it all at one time, because then we just create the same problem we had when we first did the replacement. And so we want to spread that out on a 5-year time horizon, something like that, so that when we comes to moving it into operating, we can then further spread it out. And so this is general project limits in case there's some questions about what we're looking at and what we're talking about. Upper Solano curb ramps would be curb ramp focused and would not include paving as such as a project. However, under the pavement maintenance plan update and needs for patch paving, there's a chance it might end up in there. And so Solano Avenue, we do receive a lot of complaints about the condition of Solano Avenue's paving. So we are looking at ways to address that separately. And then enhancements in progress. Active transportation plan. We have 2 projects that are related to the active transportation plan, Pierce Street Path. The path was conceptualized as extending from the El Cerrito borders on Pierce Street, traveling through the Pierce Street Park and connecting to Buchanan Bridge area to the Bay Trail. The segment 1 was completed, and a portion of segment 2 near the Saha low-income housing development unit at Washington and Cleveland has also been completed during the development project. We are also actively working on another portion of it for design in concert with the Cleveland paving and storm drain project, and that's the 3rd project here. Separately, we were awarded a grant for moving forward conceptual design and engagement by MTC recently in February. And so this is also a project that we're anticipating kickoff in short order in order to take advantage of this grant funding opportunity. I do want to bring up that with the completion of the Pierce Street Path projects under these two sub-projects or pieces of the Pierce Street Path overall length, the City of Albany will have completed all of the Tier 0 priority projects in the ATP, which is something to be proud of. There's still a long way to go. The Pierce-Cleveland Bikeway Connection Project construction is expected to be somewhat challenging, given that we are going to be doing switchbacks up a pretty steep hill. We'll get to that when we can. In the meantime, we'll keep looking for grant funding to move project design and construction forward. And then the last 2 projects on this list I wanted to talk about these in concert because it highlights staff collaboration with Alameda CTC. These are 2 projects that where we were able to work with Alameda CTC to take on project delivery for the San Pablo Pedestrian Improvements Phase 2 project, which is the new signals at Washington Avenue at San Pablo, along with some of the improvements at Clay Street. And in exchange for us taking the lead on Jackson, but both projects being funded through Alameda CTC. For Jackson Bikeway, that is funded through pre-construction, and we are partnering with them to either try to incorporate it into one of their active projects that they're working on design, so we're trying to expedite that project, or alternatively work with them for towards design separately, construction separately, perhaps under a city project. But I think this project, I would estimate we've been able to save the city of Albany about $3 million worth of funding in order to do this. So I do want to highlight this good news, I suppose. And so this is a quick overview of where these projects are located. In case there's any questions, we can always come back to these as well. And I continue to show Marine Streetscape on here just because it is a project in progress that covers so many different types of project scopes and project categories. And for enhancement projects, and so I say prioritization because what we're seeing right now is a pretty significant amount of work that we're trying to achieve in the next couple years between planning, design, and construction. And so when they're looking forward, what projects do we want to prioritize and how do we want to go about making those decisions? These are things that we're hoping to receive feedback tonight from both transportation commissioners as well as the public, if there's anyone who's going to be speaking, so that we can take those considerations into account and both share them with City Council at an upcoming study session, as well as when we are coming back to City Council with proposed project funding and schedules that we can reflect on what we hear and make sure that it's reflected upwards. And so I'm going to go through these, and I apologize. It's going to take a while. There's a lot of projects. So the Keynes-Adams
Excuse me, Allison.
Yes.
If we have questions, should we raise those questions during the projects or after you're done?
I think after we're done, just to make sure we're following Brown Act rules with kind of some of those discussions also being questions followed by comments. I think the three is, I don't know if that applies here, but.
I would certainly save any comments for after public comment.
Yeah, okay. Let me just refocus myself. I would be happy to, I'm just unsure of how that works with these kinds of presentations. Maybe somebody can clarify. I don't want to speak and then this is information that is already well known. Okay. I would be happy to speak to questions, if it helps.
I'm sorry, go ahead, and then after you've finished a project, we could ask questions.
Yes, please. Yes. All right. Keynes-Adams Bicycle Boulevard. So this project, I'm actually going to use the maps in a little bit more creative way now. This project is located on Keynes and Adams and stretch most of the length of the city of Albany, at least to Marin Avenue, and consists of bikeway improvements. This project was originally a pilot project a few years back, and we've done pilot project installation evaluation that has been shared with Transportation Commission. The details of the design, I'm going to actually try to keep this slightly higher level, and the reason is that when we kick off these projects, we'll be discussing in greater detail what the actual project scope is. But it is to kind of install permanent improvements along these two corridors. Let's see, Santa Fe Avenue traffic calming, and this is initiated by traffic calming policy and consists of the project as shown in our project detail sheets is for a cost and schedule of a quick build project based, and so there is discussion on whether the quick build kind of components, given that there's higher maintenance with them and potentially smaller amounts of cost increases, that we may be looking at more permanent facilities rather than a quick build style, in which case the costs will be slightly different as well. So I do want to preface some of these costs are assuming certain components and styles of implementation, and they may change as we kind of further refine these with comments and study session. Let's see, and so the Santa Fe traffic calming is another major corridor through in this case, from city limit to city limit. along Santa Fe.
Allison,
Yeah.
you mentioned some elements like the quick build will be discussed later. Is that the kind of thing we'd want to talk about today, or that's a later meeting thing?
I think we can talk, I think any conversation tonight is great, just so I can understand. I would say that in terms of the quick build versus kind of more permanent features, some of this is also just to make sure as kind of city maintenance can keep up with kind of damage that happens to quick build elements sometimes. But I also know that there's kind of a focus on trying to bring some of these projects to fruition sooner. And so there's a balancing act there. So I think that's actually a great thing to talk about.
Okay, thank you.
Are you done with Santa Fe?
Yes.
So looking at the sort of comparison between the Santa Fe project envelope and the Keynes and Adams Boulevards, we're talking at a high level, these sort of broad brush, but the construction for the Keynes and Adams Boulevard next step is 1.23 million.
Correct.
It's a quick build, or I believe it says it's quick build.
I think we applied for the grant as a quick build, but my impression is that we would likely not end up with a quick build if we were going to take care of it as a project. That's
So that explains why compared to the Santa Fe at 250K,
yeah.
there's such a difference.
I would say actually the main difference is there's discussions on significantly more costly improvements with Keynes Adams. So there's an entire strip of green paint that's being considered, and the paint on small scale is not too bad, but when we're talking about large amounts of green paint, it's a different product that is higher cost when we're talking about that much paint.
Thermoplasty, it costs a lot to put down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then there's the diverters and things like that, which may need to be in concrete rather than quick build for something like that from our permanent.
Could I ask, what's the definition of a quick build?
I think it differs depending on who you talk to, and I would probably actually ask if one of the transportation planners maybe can speak to it a little bit in more depth.
Yeah, I would say the typical definition is kind of temporary materials that would last somewhere between 1 and 5 years. So think of kind of rubber or something that's not concrete and doesn't require a permanency of, when you think of, you know, sidewalks and curbs, things that are built in concrete, versus, vertical, soft hit posts, rubber bumpers, that sort of thing.
So it's something that we may need to spend more money on in the future and kind of renew every 5 years. Okay, thank you.
If no more questions about the Santa Fe, I can start going through the rest of the project list. So San Pablo Avenue Cycle Track, this is the closure of the gap between the Sprouts Plaza and Marin Avenue. This was previously identified in the 2023 General Plan update, and the complexities previously with crossing, there's a constriction at the Village Creek area due to the size of the culvert, but that the guidance by Caltrans has now changed, and there now appears to be a way to get across Village Creek, kind of narrow culvert, without having to do culvert work. It needs clarification, which is why this is a potential project for future and to talk about, because most of these projects still require some amount of ongoing kind of planning and design work that has to happen in order to make it a constructible finished product. But we think that there's more likelihood of this project being able to be delivered. Excuse me, the project number 4 for critical intersection lighting upgrades. This came out of our street light valuation. It's a high priority project for intersection lighting upgrades at 7 intersections around the city of Albany. 1 intersection has been incorporated into the Alameda CTC San Pablo Corridor project, and so 6 remaining intersections are on the list. These are locations that are identified based on crash data and time of day considerations. These were 6 intersections where they think that some of the injuries and crash data is supported because it needs more intersection lighting. And then speed tables 2024 list. This is the current speed tables list as initiated by a traffic calming policy at 3 locations on Masonic. I cannot remember see if I have that in my comments. Here they are. So the 900 block of Taylor Street, the 900 block of Masonic Avenue, and the 800 block of Key Route Boulevard. With, I think it was 5 total speed humps. These would be in asphalt.
How many total number?
I think it's 5. I might get
5 or 6.
5 or 6, somewhere around there. Taylor has 1 due to just the steepness of the hill.
And this is represented by the boxes on the map?
Yes.
Okay.
The north square boxes.
Square boxes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's the person.
If only it were so easy to contain the cars and their speed
Really?
And then
in real life.
And then number 7 is our East Shore Connection Improvements Project. This was previously, we called this project the East Shore Beautification Project. We have renamed it because beautification speaks to, I think, something different than what we are doing here, which is there is a lot of dumping under the Buchanan Bridge in the East Shore area. It takes a lot of maintenance work to keep it clean and clear, and enforcement, including PD traveling through there, which hopefully they don't have to do as much if we could improve that connection there. It's also identified as part of an ATP project to improve that connection, including lighting. And so what we're looking at under this project is installing some kind of vehicular gate and lighting, and just kind of generally making that area a more pleasant place to be for folks who are using it to navigate and reducing maintenance needs. And with that, this is kind of the locations of work on these projects. And this is an overview of all the projects that are in progress, along with some of these proposed projects. And I can share this again when we start getting into more detailed discussions on priorities and comments and things like that. And lastly, our streetscape projects. So with the Marin Paving and Curb Ramp Rehabilitation Project, which includes 5 different scopes of work, including the street lighting improvements as a bid alternative. And this was a result of identifying that the street lighting improvements may be significantly impacted by some of the tariffs that might be in process, and so we don't have a great sense on project costs overall. And street lighting specifically, given some of the components they have, we're anticipating that to be maybe more impacted than the rest. And so we wanted to make sure that we could still continue with a project if City Council decides to move forward. And then lastly, our 2 other streetscape projects that we think are at some point in the future. So Buchanan Streetscape, this came out of the San Pablo Avenue Complete Street Study. And it was a San Pablo Avenue and Buchanan Streetscape Study. And so this is extending from around Marin Avenue all the way to the Pierce Street intersection along Buchanan Avenue, and consists of transportation and improvements and enhancements, safety enhancements. Based on our current understanding of where project costs are and scope, we think that this project is likely going to need storm drain rehabilitation, pavement rehabilitation in the time frame in which this project might be able to come about. So we're anticipating about $10 million of construction costs. So these are construction costs. Soft costs may be required in the lead up to these. And Solano Avenue Streetscape, our planning level cost estimate, this one we had a cost estimator perform the work for us. It would be a full rebuild of the street, and we're looking in the range of 30 to 50 million for construction costs for everything from Masonic Avenue to city limits, which is at Tulare Street, and fully rebuilding it from essentially the subgrade up is about $50 million. And we think that this might be necessary in order to achieve kind of all the goals that this street might have. And very simple map here. It's 3 streets. So these are, excuse me, all the various discrete projects that we have been talking about today. Just spread out over a map just for later discussions, mostly. And refreshing this. And so kind of ending this presentation with providing some context in our discussions on staff resources as well. So I think this is important. Some important things to mention is that the number of staff managing CIP projects across all the different programs we work on and all the different categories of work is about 6 people. That includes these same staff also work on not only all the different programs, buildings, sewer, storm drain, streets, transportation, and parks and open space, but they also have non-project related duties, including regulatory reporting, supporting maintenance and operating issues, responding to public inquiries, encroachment permit reviews, reviewing projects with other agencies, host of other needs, including making sure that we come and talk to city council and transportation commissions on a regular basis. So we do use a lot of consultant support, and what that means is, to a certain degree, we can increase our rate of project delivery by increasing the project costs using consultant support. But that at a certain point, we are unable to do that and still maintain kind of a good end product. And so there's a balancing act here where we had to balance the project costs and our funding needs with our staff resources and what projects both can afford to bring on consultant support and which ones are appropriate as well. If there's a high-touch project, there's more staff time needed in order to deliver. Let's see. So for the next year or two, given that we have quite a few projects in progress, we have the Marin paving project, which is expected to take a significant amount of staff time. But also we have a major sewer project occurring on Brighton Avenue that's expected to kick off this winter, ideally. The staff at Public Works are going to be spread fairly thin. On the transportation front, there's a lot of projects in progress as well with active transportation plans, and having received some grant funding, we really want to make sure we prioritize, at least on the staff level, I think we want to prioritize those active projects with grants. However, if there's priorities that we want to talk about, figuring out a way to expedite, those, we can talk about those, but they do come with trade-offs for funding. So with that being said, yeah, go ahead.
When you say active
Yeah.
projects around active transportation, I'm seeing the San Pablo PED improvements.
Mm-hmm.
What else are you referring to?
So the active transportation plan update, we also got grant funding for the Pierce-Cleveland Bikeway connection in order to kick off some of our engagement, public engagement, to bolster our ability to apply for grants in the future. And the funding also applies to building our conceptual design out a little bit further, again, just to keep the project moving forward. Cleveland Bikeway is in progress. We want to be able to deliver that sometime in the next couple years after completion of Marin, funding available. And Jackson Bikeway Phase 2 is also in design, and we're trying to bring that forward as well.
So things that are labeled active or grant funded.
Active or grant funded, I would say we don't want to lose those. Yeah.
Allison, I'd like to go back to where I kind of jumped the gun earlier with
Sure.
the Upper Solano ADA settlement. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that's funded and how it's prioritized to be later in the timeline of the projects that you're talking about?
So in terms of funding, this is a big puzzle. We're going to have to take a look at all the projects that we're actively working on and the ones that we're prioritizing and figure out what funding sources best suit delivery for what projects. So we don't have a clear answer on that. That's something that we'll discuss at City Council. In terms of the timeline, a lot of this comes with the Upper Solano curb ramps are expected to take quite a bit of probably commission feedback and engagement, along with all the other kind of design aspects of it. Solano Avenue it's an older street. We have a lot of constraints there with how we build our curb ramps. And so we have, I believe in this plan, if not shown there, it's definitely going to be added after tonight, is we start with a $200,000 investment into getting a consultant on board in order to start design work. And then we're going to go through with the design work and present it to council, or I'm sorry, to Transportation Commission, to this commission. And so I'm expecting that to take a certain amount of time, just given the complexities.
It's very clear to me that if we have a settlement and we have a timeline that's 2029, we're exposed to additional legal action against our failure to complete the design review, the design completion. I mean, we need to fix it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see that prioritized at the highest level.
Along those lines, how does the streetscape plan interact with sidewalk rehabilitation? Because I think some of these liability issues that came up in the past have been repaired through the sidewalk program. So how do these fit together?
So for the Marin Avenue pavement and curb ramps, there were some locations which were added for sidewalk repairs to the streetscape project that were initiated and driven kind of by the sidewalk repair program. In this case, the costs were small enough. I think we're just taking them on as a pavement-related costs, because the repair costs under the sidewalk program is spread thin enough, and it's adding, additional couple hundred feet of concrete. It doesn't create significant costs to the project. But as we're doing our paving projects in general and streetscapes, we are incorporating any kind of critical repair locations for sidewalk or anything that's been identified through the metric of deciding which sidewalk repairs are prioritized, and that's something that Transportation Commission reviews with James. I think he was here last month to talk about the project. And so as we get through the critical repairs and go into the next step, we'll be coming back with a new prioritization matrix or method to discuss with Transportation Commission for the next round. And when those locations are identified through this every 5-year survey, if those limits of work overlap with some of our paving projects where we already have a contractor out to do concrete work, we incorporate those into the project.
Speaking of the street and sidewalk rehab programs, in the last meeting, there was public comment about widening sidewalks, specifically up around Albany Hill. And it was mentioned that those types of, that type of work would be included in capital improvement projects. I didn't specifically see mention of that in the description, and I just wanted to ask if that
would be the most appropriate probably way to go about it. The Albany Hill area has a lot of considerations that make it challenging. So the sidewalks do not exist in certain places, but there's not enough street width to be able to add them. But there's also a need to make sure we take a look at emergency evacuation routes, parking kind of configurations, and utility pole relocations. It's not a simple project. It's one that I have recommended on the ATP side because we've reviewed on the staff side and provided comments from Public Works, is that we talk about that in the ATP update. Whether that becomes a priority project or not, that might be a good location to start the discussion, but it's more than just kind of a single project. I think we can add right at this moment without a little better understanding of what the overall considerations are and how to balance all the needs.
I can just jump in to say that we are going to be engaging with the Transportation Commission and the public on that specific issue and the ATP during this second phase.
Thank you.
Another smaller and maybe more feasible public comment that we got this last month was about stop signs at the intersection of Solano and Cleveland Avenues. Brandon Schneider let us know about a certain number of accidents that were happening at the intersection because cars were speeding from Cleveland onto Solano and hitting parked cars. So do you think that would be a feasible addition, a feasible project that could be done in a reasonable time span?
So we do have a project on Cleveland Avenue that's expected to reduce the lane widths from what's currently almost 13 feet on the west side of the street, which is down to 10 and 11-foot lanes. That's expected to slow down traffic some. This is part of that separated bikeway that we're looking to put in as kind of join the paving and the bikeway project together. I think improvements there on the intersection are something that can be looked at as part of the project design. We are still in design. We're also reducing the curb radii in that area, which usually benefits the drivers kind of taking the turn a little slower. And it's something that we're at staff level, we're talking about how best to approach that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was looking at the sidewalk rehabilitation year over year, and it looks like the expenditure expected for 2025 is high because of the survey, presumably.
Correct.
So are we normally spending about $200,000 a year as we projected forward?
I think rather than annualizing it out, we're showing it an incremental cost for that 1 year, and that's what we're looking at right now. I think with the new funding measure, we're going to take a look at that and see if that changes, but right now that's what we were projecting out.
Are we doing any more questions?
Yeah, I have some more. I forgot to ask it on the intersection lighting upgrades, but if this was identified that it would immediately improve safety, is there a specific reason it's not scheduled until 2028?
No, that might be an error. What I was trying to do with the scheduling, and I don't think I did a good job here, is because we don't really know when these projects are happening until we also know the funding picture. It's a balancing act between all of those different components. I was trying to do something where we showed the complexity based on the timeline it takes to get out there. This project on the intersections is not expected to be something that is too terribly complicated. We are looking at using solar lights, for example, in which case it may be able to be delivered a little bit more straightforwardly. I will say that in terms of the intersection of Peralta, where there's a signal, that may take longer. And so there's probably a balancing act there of like what we can immediately implement versus what might take maybe a little longer just because it's a signal as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I will also add to that if you don't mind. For our street lighting in particular, we don't currently have a dedicated source of funding. So street lighting has to share resources with everything else here. We have a certain amount of pass-through funding that comes to us every year. There are certain grant options that are more where streetscape or related projects are more attractive. Albany is very lucky in our prosperity, but that means that we are in this day and age, less attractive to grant opportunities that often prioritize more disadvantaged communities. So we have to be targeted about the grant opportunities we go for. So for street lighting and for this sort of thing that's very hyper-local, we have to sort of balance the different financial resources we have and funding source. So we don't currently have a target, like a specific dedicated source of funding for street lighting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I heard correctly, the Santa Fe traffic calming with the speed tables would be a quick build with the rubber that would have to be replaced every 1 to 5 years. Did I hear that correctly, or did I?
So the Santa Fe traffic calming jump in if need be. That does not include speed humps. That is a traffic calming that's using other techniques. But the rubber, I think the rubber curbs that was discussed there would be to create some of the mini traffic circles or mini traffic, traffic circles in the northern half of the project. The southern half is primarily striping and I think Key Route and Santa Fe has some kind of additional kind of quick build elements that were proposed. Again, using kind of materials that may need more maintenance long-term.
Thank you.
And I'll just add to that, yeah, Allison's correct. The speed humps are the one exception to the quick build rule on Santa Fe. So we would be using actual concrete to build out the speed humps, but everything else would be of more of a quick build nature.
Sorry, asphalt maybe for the speed humps.
It's heavy, you know.
I have a couple of higher level questions, if
Yeah.
this is a good time. Where are we at with our, tell me to stop if this is not a good time, with our EPA consent decree and getting our sewer laterals up to snuff?
So we will be coming back actually this fall with a presentation around sewer consent decree at council and our progress to date. We are currently in compliance, and in fact, we're ahead, and we're going to be kicking off a major project this fall, which is we've done all the low-hanging fruit kind of projects, and now we're going to do a complicated project, which is going to eat into our kind of buffer that we've built, but we've spent the last 6 years building a pretty significant buffer in order to give us time for this more complicated project.
Okay, next issue, PCI and the interaction with funding or issues with Metropolitan Transportation Commission. How does that interact with the CPI or the CIP? CIA, whatever.
Yeah.
Michael, I'm not sure people at home can hear you on the mic.
Okay. How's this right now? That's okay?
So the question was on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission PCI index and how it integrates with this CIP plan. So the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, MTC, they provide support to local agencies through the PTAP program, Pavement Technical Assistance Program. And we received a grant to handle this bi-yearly update, which includes the survey that we're kicking off this fall. That survey is going to inform us of a kind of current scores so that we can make informed decisions about the next few years out from here, what kind of pavement maintenance and pavement rehabilitation we need. So that falls under the annual street rehabilitation program. So it's a single item, but it covers a vast amount of work. And it ends up being one of the kind of largest projects or programs, largest cost sheets in this CIP outside of the sewer.
Okay, and final,
Yeah.
I want to add to that a little bit just to address the funding side of that, which is that included in the report that we get and the PTAP assessment, where we get recommended levels of annual maintenance and associated costs informed by current conditions, materials pricing, everything, I think. And that is integrated into the cost estimates for the annual street rehabilitation program, as well as into cost estimates for projects separated out of that program.
okay, MTC probably, I'm guessing, gets the lion's share of federal transportation funding for the Bay Area. Does it go through them as a pass-through?
It passes through a number of different agencies. MTC gets allocations from the STP, the State Transportation Program funds. Much of this funding is actually programmed as a collaboration between MTC and Alameda CTT and other county organizations. For the Alameda CTC, they do a comprehensive investment plan every 2 years and program their own regional funding as well as federal pass-through funds. Don't quote me on that, but we've seen a couple of programs in the last few years for the One Bay Area grant program, the OBAG programs. So the phase one, the San Pablo Pedestrian Improvements phase one project is actually funded through a federal grant administered through a joint effort through the OBAG 3 program.
Okay, and then the big question is all on our minds these days.
Sure.
Given the, how to say this nicely, irrationality of federal funding these days, how are you doing contingency planning?
That's a great question. I think in general, my sense is in general that there are, many of our pass-through funding sources are state and regional funded. We get pass-through funds from state SB1 road maintenance and gas taxes and then the highway users tax account. We also get pass-through funds from regional Measure BB and gas taxes and vehicle registration fees. So some of our funding sources are unaffected and are more affected by, other considerations right now, like adoption of EVs and how that affects gas taxes. In terms of the federal situation, we are monitoring grant programs and which grant programs tend to be oversubscribed. We are keeping in touch with with our various experts to keep track of which funding sources might be more at risk and which are more resilient, and kind of seeing how things play out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Anything else, Commission?
Yeah, I have one more high-level question. What is the plan, as we're developing the ATP, and obviously this plan is for the next 5 years, what is the strategy or plan to incorporate some of the new priorities that we develop with the ATP into this 5-year plan?
So this is a 5-year plan, but we, as I was explaining, we do try to make sure it continues to be a living document. And so on a yearly basis, we go back to council and provide a kind of a status report about how things are going. And transportation staff work very closely with us at Public Works to kind of inform us about upcoming projects. And so if there's a project that jumps the queue in terms of prioritizations over some of these, I think that's something we need to talk about. Whether it gets added to the CIP or not then comes to a council decision. But I think that is something to weigh. And I would say that from an ATP perspective and prioritization through the ATP, I think it's important to also talk about what projects are in progress so that when you're talking about prioritization, that you include what's in progress versus what the future desires are. So the people who are looking at it have a full picture.
Thank you.
This just jumps the agenda a little bit, talking about jumping things, but there is an ATP open house on May 20th. Is that correct?
That's correct. We'll be talking about it in announcements.
Okay. So shall we move on? My question is, we have 2 more items.
Wait.
Public comment?
Public comment,
Oh,
opinions.
how's public comment looking?
We
And
have
I see no members of the public in this room.
We have one public comment online. Amy Smullins, go ahead.
Wow, I'm it? Hey, so I see something that says shared use pavement renewal on the table, but I'm wondering if the widening and the maintenance of the outer dirt pedestrian paths on the Ohlone Greenway is included, because those paths are overgrown and rutted and degraded, and people can't walk on the path for any distance comfortably, and definitely not in a social situation 2 abreast or 4 abreast as kids going to school do every day. And this would really, widening those paths on both sides, the outer paths, would really make walking on the Greenway much safer and much more comfortable on Albany's main active transportation paths. So, you know, people of all ages walk on that every day, and hundreds of school kids walk on that every day. So I'm wondering what the plans are to improve those outer pedestrian paths. Thank you.
Any comments?
Sure. The project as currently presented in the project pages does include replacing the existing decomposed granite with new decomposed granite, so renewal of the existing facility. The discussion around whether or not there's an expansion of it further, I think would be part of kind of project kickoff and understanding that. If there is I see Justin coming up to us, so he might be looking to speak to us. Okay. If there's a desire to expand it, that comes with additional costs, and we'd have to look at it in terms of making sure we're incorporating that some into the budget. But as currently shown, it's replacing the existing DG, doing repairs, refreshing the striping, slurry seal on the pavement, and potentially putting in some root barriers. We have some fairly aggressive trees that are starting to spread along the Greenway that are creating uplift, and we want to try to help control that. But it does not, the costs that are shown there does not include a widening.
Thank you.
You hear that, Amy? Root attacks. She's a big proponent of keeping it nice and flat. She's excited about that.
Justin?
I was just going to relay that staff periodically has been receiving inquiries regarding traffic calming and follow-ups on the ones that were recommended for design. So since we didn't hear additional public comment, that I was just going to relay that it's come to staff. So on behalf of those folks, there has been regular checking in interest on how that both projects identified here proceed.
Okay. So thank you very much. That's a lot of information.
Thank you for your patience. That was a long presentation about a lot of information, yeah.
Now then, I have a question, and I need help from the staff on this, and we have 2 more items.
I'm sorry, are we not allowed to have opinions?
Oh. We have more opinions? Okay, go
We
ahead.
had questions. I tried to
Oh,
hold
so,
back
yeah,
the
I know,
opinions. Should I not have? No.
No, let's go ahead.
Okay. Do you want to start?
No, go ahead.
Okay. There's a lot here, and staff is looking for feedback.
Correct.
And maybe some priorities?
Yes, so I was going to end this, we started going into questions, so I'll say my spiel now. Let's see. With that being said, I'll end this presentation with some initial thoughts and questions. You guys jumped right into it. I didn't have to create these, but what we really want help is prioritization, approaches, if we've missed any major project that we really want to talk about, schedules, anything that really needs to be bumped up significantly. And then we'll be taking a look at maybe additional consultant support in order to make that achievable, given our current staff resources. Our projects range in size and scope pretty drastically across the CIP, and so maybe some help with kind of like prioritization. Do we want to look at different columns for prioritization? Do we want to look at different kind of like project sizes for prioritization? There's a lot of ways to prioritize, and so I think some of that can come from us, but hearing what your feedback is on how to separate these and kind of talk through them is helpful as well. So I don't know if I made this more confusing, or if, you know, and any currently inactive projects that should be prioritized ahead of currently active projects being another one that if we want to talk about tonight, I would say that given the availability of grant funding, it's maybe not ideal, but also just to have an open, transparent discussion around that.
Thank you for framing it. So let me say from my experience on the commission, I would be interested in advancing the priority of the 2024 list of speed humps, because we are constantly adding to that list, and they'll just keep piling up. I'm not sure how long the oldest of those has been waiting. Maybe as many as 4 years?
We caught up relatively recently. I think 2022 was the first round of surveys that fed into this current list.
Okay. I don't remember when that was scheduled on the schedule, but I think it's at least several years.
So that is one project where in the past we've been able to kind of find opportunities to kind of implement as part of other projects. And so that one is maybe a little more straightforward for delivery. Yeah.
Thank you. So I want to tie into some comments that Commissioner Kerr mentioned about accessibility on Solano and the exposure there. So this is a wild idea, and you'll have to excuse me, but from my standpoint, I would like to see all vehicles on Solano slowed down so that the pedestrian, cyclist, biking, scooter interface is calmer and there's more time for recovery for mistakes. So it seems like there's a convergence, in my mind anyway, between speed table crosswalks, slowing down traffic, and not having to destroy concrete and design work that is done for curb cuts. So my idea would be that there's going to have to be some pavement patching on Solano. You're going to be out there with asphalt. It's a large number of speed tables, but would it save money in the long run and time to destroy the small scale ramps that are currently in place at corners on Solano, replace them with concrete flush to the sidewalk, and replace these ramps essentially with a raised crosswalk in asphalt, so that you don't have to do a lot of planning, I think. I may be wrong there. And you don't have to destroy larger, fully engineered and designed curb cuts in the future. And you might be able to save a little bit of time, too, and have a better chance at beating that deadline. That's my wild idea.
I can try to provide some responses, but otherwise I can just take the
I'm
feedback.
not necessarily expecting a response.
I was looking up not because I was not paying attention, because I was thinking
saw
about
you
it hard.
thinking.
It's an intriguing idea.
That's a sufficient response for this evening.
I think that's a great idea. I love raised crosswalks. Good idea, Ken.
And I'd just like to chime in that, to me, the whole idea of timing is what's critical, and it's if raised sidewalks takes longer, then it may not be worthwhile. If the whole concept that Ken is proposing, as intriguing as it is, would take us out beyond 2029, that is a deal breaker for me. I really want this prioritized. I want it fixed.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. It wouldn't work if it takes more time.
Okay.
But I have a hunch that
If it can be done, that's great.
Yeah, it sounded like it was a suggestion that could achieve the speed while also additional improvements.
it's a suggestion.
Yeah.
I don't have the ability to evaluate it further.
No, go ahead.
Speaking on the shared use path pavement renewal and to the public comment about widening, the description mentions that this also includes transportation and park improvements, which is great. We've talked a lot about some short-term and long-term solutions in our February meeting. So I'd just like to emphasize the importance of especially those shorter-term suggestions, and if there's any way we can prioritize those short-term improvements, such as some of the painting ideas that Sarah had, and other traffic calming measures. The greenway is super important, as we've heard, and from many comments. So I would definitely like to prioritize, push for prioritizing, especially our shorter-term improvements to the greenway.
I just want to add some context for the Greenway as well. In the context of the Pros Commission, as part of the Park suite of projects, there is a planning effort that is proposed for the Greenway to activate space for additional programming and potentially, and so any improvements to the Greenway on a relatively larger scale would also, of course, be looked at in the context of that planning effort.
And that's separate from what is listed?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, there is if you want to speak more to it.
Sure. So the Albany Greenway and the Parks Rep and Open Space Master Plan, there's a lot of desires for increased recreational space. And part of that comes with kind of understanding what kind of paths of access between all the different spaces are needed. The Greenway being the one that would absolutely stay, but there's some old paths there that really are in need of either removal for more space or putting back. There's also lots of community desires just generally around, it's one of the areas where there is parking, and so additional parking next to the Greenway, and so there's desires for more trees. Big trees are complicated around the BART station, or BART tracks, but we're looking into like parking spot trees, things, bulb outs. Does that make sense from maybe transportation improvements, even on Masonic calming measures? There's a lot of things that kind of, not just in the Greenway itself, but peripheral to it, that we really want to look at. I'm not entirely sure the short-term improvements you're talking about. I don't exactly recall that in the details, but the path renewal project that we're speaking of would be happening before the major programming effort, because that's really a planning document to be able to then move forward with improvements. But the renewal would be happening kind of as a maintenance, a major maintenance or capital renewal effort.
Any further suggestions? I just have one issue which popped into my head because I realize Move and Groove is happening soon around the high school area and Memorial Park. There is that awful beat-up asphalt track along the south side of Thousand Oaks, alongside the dog park and the playing fields. Is that an issue that you guys are aware of? And
Yeah, that one we're looking at also. I've asked for it to be added to the ATP. Kind of, it's not part of the priority sidewalk network, but it is a gap in our sidewalk network because of how poor the condition that path is. And so we are looking at ways of, through the ATP and then maybe a capital project of trying to figure out priorities on that as well. It does come with tree removals of some very large trees potentially, and that comes with kind of cross purposes with some of the cross desires with some of the other community input that we receive. So looking at ways of maximizing use of maybe roadway, that is, Thousand Oaks is slightly wider, and so maybe there's a way to put a curbside sidewalk in that minimizes tree removal. But the large trees are kind of the major constraint here with being able to do that in a short order.
okay, well, thank you. Well, my apologies for
I'll take the apology, and then I've
Yeah,
got.
well, okay, let me finish my apology. My apology for getting ahead of myself and not allowing enough time for your opinions. But Ken,
Opinionated people.
They got heard, no foul. Since you're here. And one of the things that was mentioned was the Buchanan Bridge resurfacing. I think you brought up the sort of the temporary K-rail
Yeah.
and that situation. I'd like to suggest that the project scope include signage, because there's this whole system there, and I'm trying to come up with the street names. So, so there's that funny ramp between the lanes of Buchanan that's on Fillmore or Taylor. I don't remember which one it is. I think it's
The
Fillmore.
one that people use to do the U-turn out of
Yes.
Target. Yeah.
So that's an area that's, there are 3 lanes of traffic going west, two motor vehicles and 1 bike. The cyclists coming along are often masked. So anyway, the system that you're dealing with, I believe, goes further and goes further south on the frontage road to signage that would inform what your options are in the upcoming intersection. If I'm sure you've looked at the signage coming out of the Target,
Yeah.
and the numerous banners, and the little sign with the 2 freeway medallions and an arrow competing. So I'm asking for the project scope to include surrounding signage and the full nature of the turns that are executed, instead of using that quick turn across the bollards.
Formulate a response. So, and I'm also trying to remember the exact design that I've seen more recently. We are definitely not just looking at what's on the bridge. It does extend southward along East Shore. I don't recall anything going all the way to Fillmore, but it's something we can look at if it makes sense to add it.
I don't have a suggestion for that location, just that it's part of the system.
Yeah, understood. About the turn over the, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, about the turn over the bollards or we are looking at, this is something we are working with fire on, about what kind of hardened median that might be there in order to reinforce the fact that we don't want people turning there. It's kind of a little bit of a blind turn where that connection is. Beyond that, it hasn't quite gotten to the point where it's ready to present, but we would absolutely be something we're presenting here.
Thank you.
I have a request for, as you're thinking about the designs and the plans for installing the permanent improvements for the Keynes Adams Bicycle Boulevard, there's a known issue that if you're going, east on Marin, and you're trying to turn left on your bike onto Keynes, it's basically inaccessible because of how the road is right there and because there's no left lane for cars. And so I would just ask that you're considering that piece as you're looking at these permanent improvements of how can we make that left onto Keynes more safer and more possible for cyclists. No.
So there are improvements being proposed there as part of the Alameda CTC corridor projects. There's 2 projects on Solano component, not Solano, on San Pablo, intersections along San Pablo component, and there's an off San Pablo Avenue component, which includes the intersections of Marin and Keynes Avenue with a diverter.
Okay.
There, and then some improvements at Solano and Keynes as well. And this is one of those projects that we talk about as it's a staff review kind of project. It's been presented here about a year to a year and a half ago, I believe, but we're continuing with review as we go along. I'm not entirely sure when or if it will come back, but that's something that we can continue probably to provide update on occasionally. I'm looking at our various transportation folks, because they're more likely to be the one providing that update.
Thank you.
To that, I was happy to see that intersections were included as part of that because especially as we're developing our ATP and we're talking about creating networks, network is no good if we don't have safe intersections. And this has come up a couple times in the past recent meetings. So just once again want to emphasize how important the intersections are, and if we could have a deeper dive into that, that would be awesome. But I was happy to see that it was addressed. So thank you. And then another comment. Oh, and I guess speaking of intersections, Allison, you mentioned any like potential missed projects. It was brought to my attention there are some traffic circles along Dartmouth from the current ATP that maybe we could look at seeing where that might fit into the enhancements or any existing projects as a priority. And then speaking of priorities, the North Albany traffic calming enhancement, I believe it was 5th on the priority, but I would like to see that as a higher priority. It's very relevant to the immediate needs and uses of the community, being a connector to the middle school and connecting to existing infrastructure along the plaza. So I think I understand grants and funding and all those challenges, but I would be really supportive of prioritizing this one higher because of the more relevant and current use and need for the connection to the school and the plaza.
I do want to clarify one thing. I gave project numbers on there for ease of reference, not as a prioritization. I did not. No, that was on me. But that was more for ease of reference, so we can talk about project 1 or 5 or 7 versus saying the whole project name if we wanted to. In terms of the North Albany traffic calming, that is a project that's been around on these CIPs for a while. The discussion around consent decree and some of the sewer projects. The sewer project is a project that it's going to tear up that street pretty significantly, and water's coming in for a small project right before us. So sometime this fall, we might be seeing water coming through as well. And so there's a lot of kind of utility coordination, which would have torn those up. And so that they were pushed off for a while. There is some additional consideration there that I would like to speak to as well, is that doing some of the work there, especially if we wanted to pave, and we would be bringing up curb ramps, there is not a real storm drain situation there. And so as soon as we touch the curb ramps, we either incur storm drain costs or we end up with ramps that are maybe less desirable from a storm drain management. And so there's some complexity there with just the other project work that may get triggered. Additionally, I think there were some concerns that kind of drove this project and decisions around kind of traffic calming versus congestion that may need to be revisited from what I understand. I'm not going to try to speak too much to that because I think it's more of a transportation kind of, but I think it probably needs more. Number one, there's utility work that's going to drive it out to the outbound years of the CIP still, unfortunately. And then number two is I think there's probably more planning level work that needs to be done than just being able to drop them in.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Okay, we're good. Well, once again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Shall I move?
Yes.
Do you want a quiz on timing first? You were starting to do that before.
Yeah, it's 9:30. If we are going to extend the meeting, we need.
Did you want to check with staff on how much time they need? I think you were trying to do that when I interrupted you once or twice.
Well, we have 30 seconds to get that done, so sure. All right, let's go first.
Thank you so much.
We have 2 more items on the agenda, street tree management and sugar sweetened beverage tax my recollection is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there will be a special session of the city council to decide about the SSB. So there's two questions here. If we do both of these remaining items tonight, then it's not an issue. But if we want to attack one and maybe one of the other items off to a later date, which would you like us to do tonight?
The sugar sweetened beverage recommendation would be the action item. That shouldn't wait a month. Street tree management plan, I think, could wait a month, but we also do have an active transportation plan open house. That'll be the same week. It's now been scheduled as the next scheduled transportation commission meeting. So if you had appetite to try to power through both, that would probably assist staff capacity for upcoming events, but it's at your discretion on that.
Okay, council.
An hour, 45?
I'm fine with that.
You can
Yeah.
do 45.
Yeah, I can do 40.
I move that we extend the meeting to 10:15
Okay, second?
if needed.
Is that with both agenda items? Just clarifying.
Yes, we'll try to get through both of them.
I'll second.
You want to do a roll call, Justin? To be formal.
Commissioner Baldwin. Commissioner Kerr.
Yes.
Commissioner Hiley.
Yes.
Commissioner McCroskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Zuba.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnes.
Yes.
Motion carries. Did you want to stick to the agendized order, or did you want to take that in reverse order?
Do you have any comments, Jeff?
I'm ready to go fast.
On either?
No, I'll do the street tree management plan, and Justin and Ben will do the sugar sweetened.
Okay, I would recommend we do SSB. You said you're ready to go on SSB, correct?
No,
He's doing street tree management plan. He's doing agenda item 5-2, or 6. Yeah.
Just have them doing them both at the same time.
Yeah, we have two ears, one in one ear, one in the other.
Speedy trees.
Okay, Jeff, go for it, please.
Good evening again, Jeff Bond, the Community Development Director. This is an update for you. We are in the process of preparing a street tree management plan. The Parks, Recreation, Open Space Commission is the lead commission providing guidance on that. But I am making the rounds to your commission this evening, of course, and to the Climate Action Committee last week to give you a quick update. We are in the drafting stage of a report. We've been working on it for a couple of years, and I'll touch on just some of the highlights. Just a moment ago, Justin was mentioning that planned anticipated community engagement on the active transportation plan. We're hoping to fit in the street tree management plan as part of that discussion as well, since many people will be the same people interested in the ATP are probably really interested in this as well. So I'm going to just give you a few key points. The draft will hopefully be coming out in the next few weeks or month or so. We're working on it right now, but I'll give you the highlights of what we're trying to do and what we expect to see in it. And if you have any feedback, great. You'll have other chances to give feedback too, so don't worry about it. At the moment, our street trees, now these are just the trees that are in the streets. May be obvious, but it's not including, say, trees in parks. Those are city trees, but we are programming those in the context of programming the park. So this is just what you have up and down the streets. It's currently about 4% of our street canopy, and we'd like to increase that by 20% to 5%. It doesn't sound like much, but that's roughly, and we're still doing the math a little bit, but that's planting a couple hundred trees a year. And we need that both to expand the canopy, also to replace trees that are unsafe or at the end of their lives, or trees that are just not appropriate because of the damage that they're doing to properties or to our sidewalks or streets. Part of the plan is going to include some management changes. Again, we chose the word management very intentionally because it's really how the city is going to manage this asset. We right now have a reactive pruning program where our city arborist kind of reacts to the condition of a tree. It doesn't look right, it doesn't look good, or it's not healthy. I'm going to go work on it. to a proactive pruning program where we just go automatically by neighborhood, and most trees might just need a little snip here and there just to clean it up. Other trees will need more attention. But by doing it neighborhood by neighborhood on a program, we can save a lot of money. And as that implements over 5 or 10 years, the expectation is that the tree canopy overall will be doing well, and we'll get to trees and take care of them before they become a problem. Other things that we're talking about, including in the plan, is an improved decision-making process and delegation of responsibilities for different types of decisions. Right now, there's kind of different decisions made by different people, and we think we can improve that significantly. We want to incorporate more formal standards for some of those decisions. In the arborist community, they do have grading systems and so forth for safety, and we want to start to use those to help us make the safety decisions that about whether a tree is potentially going to cause damage or injury. Other thing that is quite old is the municipal code standards for who is responsible for caring for trees and who is liable for damage to trees. And essentially, if we want to grow this canopy, the city is going to need to be more proactive and take a greater responsibility for making that happen, is our view. And so sometimes people don't want a street tree in front of their home. Right now, we respect that. But if we want to grow the tree canopy in the city, maybe we're just going to have to be a little bit more assertive about, hey, you're on a city street, that's a city sidewalk, there's a good place for a tree, we want to plant it there. So that will be something that will be discussed. And then just taking into consideration the types of species of trees that we would be planting with recognition the impacts of climate change and preparing for the future climate that these trees are going to grow up in, and not necessarily the current climate or the climate that we've had in the past century or so. There are some transportation, this overlaps to some degree with transportation. Obviously, the trees that damage sidewalks are impacting an important mode of transportation in the city, so we want to not plant any more of those trees and remove the ones if we need to, or do the route management that James and others in Public Works are already doing, so that we're not causing more more sidewalk damage by the routes than necessary. Another thing that we'll be looking into is whether there are places we can expand the tree wells. One of the challenges that we're encountering is trees don't grow very large if they're in a small tree well. And so if we can accommodate a bigger tree well, we'll get a bigger tree. But that impacts the sidewalk, or it impacts the roadway. And in some of our streets, that's a pretty tight fit as it stands. So again, Public Works has had some success with their sidewalk repair and you've seen these, I think, where they're curving sidewalks or curving curbs to accommodate trees and expanding that practice in more places. There'll also be some consideration given to placement of trees relative to street signs and to street lights, which again are an important part of your transportation network, and make sure that we're not working at cross purposes as we're trying to expand the street canopy, but we plant a tree underneath a street light. In 10 years, that might be a problem. So we don't have the formal draft out publicly yet. We're still working on it. We've gotten some good feedback from the Parks Commission the other day, a couple of weeks ago, good feedback from the Climate Action Committee last week. If you have any thoughts tonight, that would be great. If not, you'll have an opportunity later to do that in the upcoming public engagement work that we're doing, and we'll bring it back to the commission another time when you have a little bit more time to digest it, if you would be interested in that. That was quick.
That was excellent.
But I tried to keep it quick. If you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear them.
There has been one tree that's been, public comment has originated from the way that this tree was blocking a stop sign, and it caused an accident on Garfield and Evelyn. I'm not sure if that's something we're prioritizing, picking specific trees because they obscure signs and things like that, or is that not really what we're doing right now?
Well, this evening, you don't have to do that. We are aware of that, and I'm not sure what the resolution of that particular situation was, but I do know that we received that email, and that's the kind of thing that we want to be careful about in the future, either in the planting or in the pruning. I don't know what the solution was for that particular case, but it's exactly the kind of thing that, in the past, I don't think we really thought about a lot.
Okay, thank you.
I will just add, I encountered a similar situation on Key Route southbound, right at the high school, where a tree was blocking a stop sign. And I called Mark, who was the Public Works Director, and that was fixed in minutes or hours. So, I mean, there are sort of these kind of emergency things that we can get done promptly if they're really public.
Yes, we can and we do, but that's exactly the thing we want to get out of the habit of and get more proactive, because we're responding rather than being proactive, we're spending more, we're not being cost effective. So over time, we hope to be able to do that same thing before you notice it and before you need to call us.
I have a question with this proactive switch to being more proactive. Is this including not just on the actual street, but also sidewalk blockage? Because I notice a lot of like bushes that have overgrown from people's properties that are blocking the sidewalk, or trees that are on the person's property, not on the side, not on the like, the in-between section, that have low branches where you're, almost having to duck to walk under them on the sidewalk. How does that, like, how would that fit in if it's, the sidewalk access that's being impacted rather than street and signage?
So it's a little trickier for us to do any trimming of what is essentially a tree that is on private property. If that is the kind of thing that we do want to get reports about, and we're gearing up separately a program, a code enforcement program, where we will be able to have people advise property owners in that case, hey, you need to trim your tree, or the shrubbery, or whatever it is that's making, that's a hazard to the pedestrian.
So in this like new proactive style, would you be like scanning for that kind of stuff and sending messages to those private homeowners, or would that still need to be coming from like reports from the community?
I think that would be more likely reports from the community. We would really be focusing with arborists, who I think have a particular skill set, and they're kind of looking up
Right.
at the tree. Yeah.
Speaking of keeping sidewalks open and accessible, you mentioned that tree wells might impact sidewalks, and I appreciate, last month's presentation, the creative ways that we're able to maintain the sidewalk, and that's awesome. Are there any opportunities in locations where, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but like if the city owns or has right-of-way on the street, to instead of impacting the sidewalk, impacting the road?
We would look at those opportunities. There aren't many. We still need to accommodate vehicles, garbage trucks, fire engines, the day-to-day traveler. We don't want to create inadvertently a hazard for somebody, say a bicyclist that is trying to navigate a street by having a lot of things just kind of punch out quickly. So it's really going to, we would like to be able to do that, but it's going to be a little bit of an engineering exercise. As we narrow lanes, it triggers all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
But where we can, and where we have nicer, wider streets, we would definitely be doing that.
So maybe those areas could be prioritized or flagged as a possibility and worked in conjunction with some of the more complicated transportation planning.
Right. We'll incorporate street trees into some of the bigger projects that you'll be seeing, for sure. But that's not the only thing we're going to, in order to plant 200 trees a year, we're going to have to do it all over the place. So it's not just going to be your big projects.
Quick question. Up until now, if an individual resident wants to petition PROS for tree removal, they have to pay a fee. I think it's about $150. Is that going to continue, that process?
We're taking a look at that, not necessarily. Obviously, if it's a safety issue, that's one thing, but if it's a perfectly healthy tree and it's not a nuisance or a hazard, I think we're going to make it a little bit more challenging. Again, we're trying to achieve a vision that's been established for us is to grow the canopy, not to reduce it. And if we're going to take responsibility, if the decision makers and for that matter, perhaps the taxpayers, all this is going to take some money. If we're going to be given the responsibility and the funding to do it, then we want to be able to do it.
Okay.
Jeff, I'd just like to suggest that in terms of the street tree wells, so many of the wells in our commercial districts have iron grates over them, and often the trees will grow beyond the capacity of the grate to accommodate it. And I'd like the plan to build in possible buildups of those wells, so there'd be a bench under the tree or some way address the fact that that's not a permanent fixture, that iron grate is going to be outgrown.
Right. So. Our consultant has a lot of experience with that kind of thing, and one of the interesting things that we've learned, I didn't realize this, but for example, the decomposed granite around some of the trees, that's not good for the tree. So it'd be better to have just an open compost area. That's the best thing you can do for a tree in the tree well. And yeah, the grates, I mean, some of those grates are designed to be cut as the tree grows larger, but that's just one more thing to do that we never seem to get around to doing.
Just look ahead to that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I had 2 comments, or doing comments. Right?
And no opinions.
Yeah. This is questions? Okay, then I'll hold off. I'll make mine very short because I know we're.
Okay. Any public comment out there?
If you have a public comment on this item, please use the raise your hand feature. No public comment.
Okay, and so we can move on to our, from questions to comments.
Okay, I have 2 very quick ones. One, I was just looking at my maps because I think that when we're talking about these, like, going into the street to accommodate trees rather than like into the sidewalk, I think it's Milvia. There's there's a section of Milvia, and I don't know if they did this because of trees or for traffic calming, where they've really kind of made the road meander, and it's really nice. I want to say, does anybody know exactly where I'm talking about? I think it's
north of Hearst.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's north of around there, and it looks really nice. And there's so many. They've incorporated a lot of trees, so I would recommend checking that out. And the other thing is, when I was looking at your plan, I saw that I think it's like 97% of the trees are non-native trees, and I wanted to just make a comment that I hope that as you're thinking about what trees to put in, I know that there's a lot of concerns with like roots and there's all of these things that you're having to kind of weigh, but I think it's really important that we plant more native trees, and I hope that that's part of our goals.
So I've learned a lot. That question comes up, that comment comes up a lot. I think it's worth mentioning just for a moment. Our consultant has talked a lot about that as well in some of the meetings. There's 2 things about that. First, some of the native trees don't do well in an urban environment because that's not their native environment. So that's one thing. And the second thing is our environment is changing. And the consultant showed us an app or a web page the University of Maryland created where they're projecting what our climate is going to be like. And I think it was 40 years or something. And so we're going to be, I think it was Pomona was the Albany weather will be like. It's down in San Bernardino County. I think they're San Bernardino County. So our consultant's suggestion is, yes, to the extent that we can plant natives and how that supports biodiversity and so forth, we should absolutely do that. But we have to recognize that some of those natives aren't going to do well in an urban environment, and they're not going to do well in a Southern California climate. And there will be some other trees, hopefully, that can support that biodiversity and can thrive in our future. So it's something that our consultant who has really given a lot of thought to. I hope you get a chance to look at it in the draft report.
Thank you.
Anything else? Please, no more Branford pears. That's my only comment.
Yeah, there'll be a species list in the report too, I think.
So next time when you bring this back, we can develop a list of people who you can tell they're going to get a tree before you leave work.
I'm hoping to get the report done before I leave.
You're hoping what? That'll help?
No, to get this draft report done.
Okay.
What Ken is alluding to is I'm wrapping up my Albany service this summer, so I'll be retiring. So this is one of the things I want to get done before I go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Shall we move along? Any more questions on trees? Thank you, Jeff. Okay, sugar sweetened beverages.
Thank you, Vice Chair Barnes. This, I think, will be a quick item. Last month, at the March 27th Commission meeting, the Commission made a motion to recommend that City Council consider $185,000 for the crossing guard program, $25,000 for the school bike safety training, and $10,000 for an e-bike safety training pending Commission review and approval. So that's the piece I'm bringing back to you tonight. And also recommended that Council fund the crossing guard program from other city revenue sources. So staff reached out to Cycles of Change and to Bike East Bay to discuss potential e-bike safety training. Staff also discussed logistics for offering trainings with city recreation staff. So two potential paths on this: student in-school training. Cycles of Change trainings in middle or high schools typically span 3 days. The lessons are more detailed and have higher number of students per instructor, but are typically 3-day long sessions and significantly higher cost than for elementary school training. The other main challenge we identified in thinking through this for including actual e-device training would involve acquiring and housing electric bikes, because they currently don't provide those, and identifying parent comfort and interest in getting their students on electric devices. A simpler first run at this might entail the more standard bike training that they provide at middle or high school, with a discussion of speed and safety associated with electronic assistance without actually supplying these vehicles. The 3-day training, day one is helmet and bike fit, and we discussed envisioning e-bike specific education on the specific features, buttons, pedal assist, throttle, that kind of thing, if it was with the vehicles, or just a discussion of that. Day two, they do line drill and intersection training, and then do a ride out of campus on the 3rd day as part of that program. Bike East Bay offers a range of workshops from 1-hour e-bike safety, but that is more focused on battery safety and some general bike skills, to 2-day urban cycling 101 that mixes classroom and on-the-road training. In discussing this with Bike East Bay education staff, they suggested a 2-hour outdoor curriculum along the lines of a more advanced version of the adult and teen learn to ride curriculum that they provide. Would require some curriculum development, but could focus on rules of the road, safe handling, and trail etiquette, and be marketed toward adults and teens relatively new to their devices. Participants would need to bring their own device, and this would simplify logistics. A $10,000 recommendation would likely cover 1 to 2 workshops along with the curriculum development and any city space or staffing support needs. But if it was mostly an outdoor ride curriculum, that should be pretty minimal. There may also be some funding available from Alameda CTC that could be applied towards some of the Bike East Bay costs. And I talked through the items there. And so, yeah, for discussion, seeking a recommendation. If you have specific path forward recommendation on one of those two options, or just want to recommend a dollar amount and provide further guidance on how that would be developed, the table is yours.
Yeah, so when I was in middle school, I actually had a bike training curriculum, either in 6th or 7th grade at Albany Middle, and I really enjoyed it. I found it was a great use of the resources and the time. I think instead of PE for 3 days, we would go and do this intersection training, learning to ride safely, and then on the last day, we went out on a ride. And my only qualm was that I got lice from the helmet. But other than that, it was a really great experience. And yeah, it was really fun. And so I can definitely recommend, I'm not sure if this is the exact program that I experienced, but I'm sure it's something similar. And I heard a lot of positive reactions from my friends at that time.
Can I ask if you also got training in elementary in Albany?
I did not. I did not.
It's been somewhat hit or miss. I'm sorry.
So your happy experience is more like which of the two plans, would you say? The second one?
The two plans being,
Well, the first, there was a,
If we're going into discussion, let me just
sorry.
give
Oh,
a
true.
brief
That wasn't-
moment. If you're
I always forget.
online and want to
question.
comment on this item, please use the raise your hand feature. Not saying comment. Proceed. Thank you.
Really.
what were the
Amy
two?
must have gone to bed.
So one was cycles of change, which was in-school training in the middle school or high school. The other was Bike East Bay workshop that would be outside of school, geared towards people signing up, bringing their own device.
Including helmets.
Yeah, I experienced the in-school training, 6th or 7th grade, right before COVID. Yeah.
Can I give my comments? I support doing something in the school, and I think, because then I think we're getting a wider range of participants. And I would support doing something that is more focused on a discussion of like speed and trail etiquette rather than going down the path of like supplying e-bikes or, focusing so much on e-bikes, because I worry that could then show, kids who don't have e-bikes, like, oh, this is possible, I want that. Where if we can just focus on trail etiquette and speed, that is relevant for all users. And I think, my concern of doing something outside of the schools or more community-based is that the people who are going to sign up and participate in that sort of activity are probably not the people who are speeding on the path anyways. So I think I would support doing something of cycles of change and, having both an elementary program that is more introductory to, bikes and how to ride them, and then the middle school program that's more focused on street safety, etiquette, and speed.
I definitely agree. But Ken can, of course, go.
You're absolutely welcome to your opinion before and after I speak.
Okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I just meant I'd like to go next. Yes, I agree with many things you said. It would be rather ironic to create a demand
Yeah.
for electric bikes among people who aren't fully mature.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. So the program worked because the way we designed it many years ago, about 15 years ago, was we would try and have all elementary students leave elementary school having done the Cycles of Change, Learn to Ride program, and then reinforce it and catch people who didn't catch it in elementary school in middle school. So
I went to Marin Elementary, and I don't remember ever learning to ride a bike from there. Of course, I learned in my driveway with my parents, but it wasn't instructed to me in elementary school, at least, was my.
turnover of staff at the elementary school, who were asked to support the program, meant that it wasn't consistent.
This was, of course, like 13 years ago.
Yeah, even then. Yeah. I was the Safe Routes to School coordinator for Marin School around that time.
Really?
I may have put a I Walk to School Day sticker on you.
I'm the Safe Routes to School.
Without light.
That sticker might still
I
be
run
there.
Safe Routes to School activities at Albany High School nowadays.
Cool. Yeah.
No, it's a great program.
Yeah. Anyway, my ideas are similar to Sarah's. I think having a middle school program that targets PE classes in one of the grades each year is a great way to catch up with kids again. There are so many bodily changes and mind changes happening between elementary and middle. So I wouldn't do it in 6th, I'd do it in 7th or 8th if possible. The way that kids perceive the world just changes. Their peripheral vision increases. All sorts of things are going on, and their desires are changing. I would focus on traditional street knowledge and rules of the road, and the walking intersection that is a hallmark of instruction that I have instructed myself with many kids. So sort of a two-tier program in that way. I would love to make sure that Albany's sidewalk rules are part of the curriculum. Kids under 16 are allowed to, or up to 16, are allowed to ride on sidewalks that are not in commercial districts. So basically not on Solano or on San Pablo. I'm not sure that always gets included. But then also, in elementary, you would want to address speed and appropriate device use by presumably 5th graders, 10-year-olds. And then that changes slightly when you get to middle school. You're talking about 12 or 13-year-olds. And it's a closer reality. I still would be open to also having classes available a couple times a year at the community center. People who adopt e-bikes who have not biked may not be the most likely to self-select for a bike class, but they also might be uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I'm not against doing them.
Yeah.
It's more just where we're going to prioritize.
Right. So Bikey Spay is one possible avenue. You can also hire individual league certified instructors to teach essentially the same curriculum for a lot less. And they have insurance that covers on-street riding as part of their certification if they keep it current. So that could be significantly less expensive. And that's pretty much what I got.
I have a question about how this fits into our other recommendations for allocation of the tax.
We need to look at the numbers, yeah.
Right, so, because we have 25,000 for the school bike safety training. So I guess what I'm hearing, or what I wonder is, how is this additional 10,000, if we're talking about this 3-day program being in school, how is that any different than the school bike safety training? Or is it similar enough? Do we have enough in that 25 already that we feel like we can fulfill all the goals that we just talked about, which I totally agree with? How do those two fit together?
We might want to hear from other commissioners about their preferences before we start
I want to
narrowing.
double check the funding amounts. There they are.
How much, can you remind me about how much money total we have? Or we're projecting?
Estimate is 220,000, I believe.
Yeah, we exhausted it.
We took it all. That's right. I guess I just want to clarify in my own mind how we as a commission and how the city of Albany collecting this tax interfaces with AUSD in school curriculum. if we were talking, and I know, Ken, you've had some experience with this, so you may be able to answer my question right off the top, but we are suggesting that we spend $25,000 of revenue from the sugar sweetened beverage on AUSD, and we're already spending $185 in the crossing guard program. So maybe sugar sweetened beverage should have been a school district tax. I don't know, but how do we interface with the curriculum on that?
So city staff works with Cycles of Change to make the offer to the,
Just a thumbnail on Cycles of Change. I don't know.
what's that?
A thumbnail sketch of what Cycles of Change is. I don't know.
So they're a nonprofit that runs a bike shop and works on getting bikes free of charge in hands with kids who don't have access, and also does education in schools. They are partners.
They're the ones who do that. It's not.
Yeah.
I got it. Okay.
They're-
They work throughout the East Bay.
Yeah.
I was biking in Fremont along the canals and encountered Cycles of Change. with-
Okay, that's clear. I thought it was the city that was going to go teach in the schools, and I was a little concerned.
They're our contractor essentially for what's the 25,000
Okay.
currently.
Thank you.
I know we have exhausted our budget on this, but in the future, what do we think about, I know we talked earlier today about how the lighting doesn't have a real source of funding. Could the sugar sweetened beverage tax be used in part to fund street lighting?
I was present at the creation of this, so the original idea of this sugar sweetened beverage tax, and what we told the voters we would do, was to fund public health type programs, mostly around nutrition, less sodas, better whole food. So I can't see, I think that's pretty far off of what the original intent of the program was, and I think there'd also be some, logistical problems.
So,
Yeah. Go ahead.
so we have segued in many cases to programs like gardening at the Gill Tract, to things related to exercise and active transportation in this case. Lighting is a further stretch.
Right,
I don't think, and also the scale is very different
it is.
and out of scale with this tax. And we can't really say we've gone over our budget. I think we have not, we may be over allocating in our recommendations to
Right.
City Council. None of this is guaranteed.
And it's also important to remember that this is all general revenue funds. It's not separate from everything else that the city spends money on. It's just the process for the ordinance that when it passed, or for the law when it passed, was that there would be public comment. The city can still decide not to do any of these things because the finances of the city may require a different choice. So it's important to remember that.
I would just add that in many years, even though our recommendations have been taken up, logistical issues have interfered with the expenditures as intended. So that it's a little mushy.
Just throwing out ideas.
Yeah. Well, I will, if I may, anybody else comments? Just yesterday, I was riding my bike in Marin County, not going too hard up a hill, and a young teenager passed me on one of those electric scooters that have wheels about this big. And then I did end up going faster than him down the hill, but he must have been doing 20 miles an hour. And when you fall off those scooters at that speed, you face plant. And so part of me is, there are a broader set of safety issues about, kids wearing helmets. He wasn't wearing gloves. If you do this, I've done it. It chews up your hands. Kids, I think, come from families that are a little wealthier and more entitled in Marin County. I hate to make raging social stereotypes, but it's true. But I think what I'm seeing over there is coming our way. And so there's issues. Part of this is a parental education thing, because I think parents need to understand you just can't give a kid an e-bike and say, hey, go have fun, because they end up in the hospital. There's a horrible example involving cars in Marin County, but there was an accident with 6 kids in a Volkswagen Tiguan that hit a tree on San Geronimo Road, which parallels Sir Francis Drake. I've been on that road many times. None of the girls are over 16, 4 of them are dead, and 2 of them are in critical condition in the hospital. So I think parents sometimes need some education too about the risks that their children incur when they're given technologies that they're really not quite prepared for. California does a very good job on motorcycle licensing, for example. They have very rigorous programs.
Michael, first of all, I'm taking away that you're back on your bike. That's great news.
Well, it doesn't have nothing to do with me.
No, but that's good, because we know you were injured and you're back on the bike. That's great. But we have 4 minutes left.
So my suggestion is that we figure out some way to educate parents in this process as well.
Could that even be just like information that goes home after the kids complete their program with, like, here's the flyer for parents that could be, as a place to start. It's like, here's more information or whatever. Would that be a good place to start?
I guess the point I'm trying to make is the problem that's coming is not just about kids, it's about families and parents.
I'll say also really quick that I was just in Santa Barbara a couple weeks ago, and their e-bike with throttles and like these fast-paced scooters is like light years ahead of ours. I was thinking, like, I'm so happy I'm not on their transportation commission, because it's really, really, really bad.
Yeah. Sidebar, we can learn a lot if we look to them. Marin County just restricted Class 2 e-bikes for children under 16. So, I think we have a lot to learn.
I think these are good conversations for us to have separate from the sugar sweetened beverage tax of, like, what do we, where do we want to go? Go ahead.
I'd like to propose that we table the parental information sheet from the sugar sweetened beverage and maybe develop one ourselves as a subcommittee.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Can I go back to the question I had, because I think that would help us understand what the next step is. I hear that our goals, or the thoughts in favor of the Cycles of Change program really seem to support what might also be being done by the school bike safety training, which we've allocated 25 for. So my question is just, is that 25 enough to achieve all the goals that we've talked about? If not, then I could see allocating that additional 10K to it. If it is sufficient and we're able to achieve all the goals we talked about being in school for the kids, then I would say that the additional 10 should go towards the Bike East Bay style curriculum for other folks.
So then what we will be advocating the next 2 minutes is basically this plan with the $10,000 more clearly specified to go to the group that
Was it Cycles of Change?
Cycles of Change type model.
Could I take a stab at a motion? I'd like to move that we approve the draft recommendation with the stipulation of the $25,000 and the $10,000 be combined into school bike safety training to include e-bike safety to the extent possible within the curriculum provided by the contracted agency.
Friendly amendment?
Oh.
Sidewalk rules.
Yeah. Is that a second?
And I'll second.
Okay.
But meanwhile, I'm
We
gonna
have public
move-
comment. apparently.
It's out of sequence. I'm going to move that we extend the meeting a maximum of 5 minutes to deal with future agenda items and announcements.
I'll second that.
Got a second on the end? All in favor, raise your hand, maybe? I'm sorry, I'm starting to run the meeting. Michael, how do you want to take the vote?
Do the roll call.
Commissioner Baldwin.
Aye.
Commissioner Kerr.
Yes.
Commissioner Hiley. Commissioner McCroskey. Commissioner Zuba. Vice Chair Barnes. Motion carries. All right. We had a motion and we had an amendment.
Seconded.
We had a second.
Good amendment.
Yeah, within this motion, do we also have that caveat about recommending that they move the
Request.
crossing guard funding out of this in the future? Or maybe we give them like a 5-year decrease as we stage out of that? I feel like that.
I think when I made the comment that this is all general revenue fund, that council fund crossing guard program would automatically come out of something else because it's all general fund.
Okay.
That was kind of what I was getting at, but
Yeah,
it wasn't
right.
very clear.
In reality, all the money gets dumped into the general fund to start with. However, we do have this little special meeting process with the city council.
So to be clear, do you want that struck from the memo that goes to the commission or keep it in? I was unclear. Which was part of the motion. The motion.
We should leave it there with the understanding that it is going to come from another source anyway.
Well,
Possible. If it doesn't get approved, then it will come from another source, as is the pleasure of the council to fund it.
yes. I think the core of what we're asking for is $35,000 for school bike safety training with extra money for an emphasis on emerging e-bike safety issues. And how the,
Street etiquette and.
and sidewalk
speed stuff,
etiquette.
yeah.
So is this excluding community center classes?
I feel like that needs to be a different budget line in the.
Well, it would all eventually come out of the general fund anyway. So the question is, do we want to ask for that now or?
Judy, what was your intent with your motion?
To get us out of here by.
Did you want to just have schools, or would you also include potential community center classes?
It doesn't need to be just in the schools. It can be across the board.
Inclusive?
Yeah, inclusive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so can we have a restatement of the motion?
So it's a motion to include the $185,000 for the crossing guard program and $35,000 for bike safety training, including e-bike safety
Sidewalk etiquette
and sidewalk etiquette.
and some community-based,
The opportunity for community-based.
with the opportunity for a community-based program.
With an elementary program and a middle school program.
For all
Okay.
ages.
Just don't see how that's going to
And everything.
work with the vagueness of the community aspect, but.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it would be beneficial to provide classes for people who are new to e-bikes and want to do it safely.
I agree, and that's why I kind of wanted to get at, is the 25 enough? There's no, if we have enough to reach the people we want to.
So maybe we
But-
just drop the crossing guard thing.
It would be, it
We
would,
don't even address the crossing guards, and we just propose our 35,000 for school trainings plus 10,000 for community-based training.
Oh, not drop altogether, reduce it.
Just, we don't address it. We
Yeah.
don't have to address the crossing guard program.
I agree,
We
because
can just address what we want to address.
Yeah. And I think what we're saying is that the school bike safety program is very important. We would like to see some e-bike components with everything else we've talked about. But we also do find it important to offer these opportunities to the larger community through the community center programs or the Bike East Bay programs. Also great that there could be additional funding from Alameda CTC. So, yeah, I like that.
Because we don't have to get to 220,000. because there's, other commissions are going to be giving their recommendations as well. So we can just give ours of, 35,000 for a school bike training program plus X amount, 10,000 for community-based programming. Is that a good motion?
Wait a minute now. Yeah, I agree that
Don't even address the.
we don't need to address the crossing guard program because it's all the same general fund money anyway. But so we're talking now, I thought, about $35,000 for school bike safety, with sort of the traditional program, plus e-bike training in the schools. And then if there's money to go around, then a community-based program for adults who are new to e-bikes.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
And,
motion.
and then including sidewalk etiquette.
You're talking about talking points or curriculum, yeah, on the sidewalk and the e-bike.
Right, I mean, so we're,
Not hands-on practice
We
in
could
the
just
schools.
say, with the recommendation that city council come back to us with what the curriculum should be for the program.
well, I think we should hit a target for the money, $35,000. And we don't have to develop the curriculum ourselves tonight because that's what they, so
So
what,
you're offering a counter motion?
no, I think this was,
Well, I haven't heard from Judy that she wants to drop the crossing guard.
I am happy to remove my motion and hear a new motion.
Okay.
do you want
So
to,
you have essentially made a motion.
all right, let's restate the motion. We're asking for $35,000 for a school bike safety training program with enhancements for e-bike safety, both school-based, and in addition, if funding is available, a community-based program for adults who are new to e-biking. And the program can include issues such as sidewalk etiquette for young kids who are still allowed to ride on sidewalks.
The community-based would be in the style of the Bike East Bay suggested. Is that what?
I think we
It
can
seems
leave
to
that
be
to
aligned with-
staff.
Yeah.
There are some other opportunities that I'd like to explore with them and have them.
Understood.
I will second that motion.
that don't include paying me. Let me just be explicit about that.
Yeah, conflict of interest. You should have been saying.
I'm saying, I will not get paid to teach any of these classes. I might volunteer to teach some, but I won't get paid to teach any of these classes.
So we have a motion. Can we roll call? Are we-
No, Julian already seconded
Already
it.
Oh,
seconded.
I'm sorry.
So are we, Commission, are we ready for a roll call on this one? Okay.
Commissioner Baldwin.
Aye.
Commissioner Kerr. Commissioner Hiley. Commissioner McCroskey.
Aye.
Commissioner Zupa.
Aye.
Vice Chair Barnes.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. We need to extend the meeting for 7 more minutes to talk about future agenda items.
Would you like to?
Yeah, I second that. Fine with us moving.
Let's just,
Last one.
Motion and a second. Commissioner Baldwin.
Aye.
Commissioner Kerr.
yes.
Commissioner Hiley. Commissioner McCroskey.
Yes.
Commissioner Zupa.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnes.
Yes.
Motion carries. Announcements. Staff announcements. May is Bike Month. Thursday, May 15th is Bike to School and Bike to Wherever Day. We have set, as Jeff mentioned earlier, May 20th, 5:30 to 7:30 will be an open house for our active transportation plan, the Phase 2, looking at the future network, as well as the street tree management plan and watershed management plan. We'll have lots of planning to talk to folks about all in one
What was the
event.
third one?
Watershed management plan,
Is it 5:30 to 7:30?
5:30 to 7:30. Other announcement, City Council on April 7th authorized call for bids for Marin Phase 2, which Allison I discussed in the CIP, and looking at probably May 5th discussion at City Council for Solano Avenue direction on how to look at Solano in regards to the active transportation plan. That's the staff announcements.
And I just have a very brief announcement. I hope those of you who are free on Sunday can stop by for the Move and Groove event, which I am part of the Planning Commission, or the Planning Committee for. And it should be a fun time, and it's good outing. So please come if you can. It starts at 9:45, and if you're not registered to run by now, you can just come listen to music.
There's a Go Green Fair tomorrow, Saturday at the El Cerrito Plaza BART station from 11 to 3. Solar, micromobility, etc. And there is going to be an Energizer station co-sponsored by the city, our mayor, Robin Lopez, and the Albany Strollers and Rollers on May 15th, Thursday, May 15th, from 7 to 9 a.m. at the Greenway and Masonic, Greenway and Marin. This is why you don't let the meetings go so late, right? Announcements, I think that's what
Gilman.
oh, yes,
opening.
thank you. There, the I-80 Gilman interchange is having a ribbon cutting at 11 a.m. on Monday of next week. Strollers and Rollers are organizing a ride starting at 10:30 at that same Greenway and Marin intersection to kind of celebrate our involvement and the connectivity between the Greenway, Bay Trail over the new bridge and other facilities. Future agenda items.
Seeing none,
Seeing no future agenda items?
do you have one?
I do, I'm sorry. The council, in considering Solano Avenue, directed staff to return to this commission with the phasing changes to the signal at Santa Fe and Marin, switching to an all no right on red cycle, 24/7. And I was wondering if the updated design of the Marin at Ordway intersection was also going to come back redesigned to this commission. I'd like to propose that we agendize creating a resolution thanking Jeff Bond. And I'm happy to help formulate that with staff and perhaps Fareed, because we've both worked with Jeff in transportation for a long time and otherwise. That's what I've got. Thank you.
Anyone else? Staff, you're good. You got those comments down? Okay, so we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.